Chapter 696. Marquis, just where did this girl come from? How is she so powerful? That's right. Although the Wujian grass in the box isn't heavy, the box isn't. How can she be so strong? Gao Feng and Nia Yan walked up to Wang Chong and whispered. Ha, this is Wushang village. You'll get used to it in the future. Wang Chong smiled. Straightening his robes, he got up and walked away. The voice of the little girl came from ahead. Hurry up. The little girl's speed was much faster than they had imagined. The further they went, the steeper the mountain became, and the harder it was to walk. But the little girl leading the way seemed to be flying. Her speed didn't decrease in the slightest. As the crowd watched from behind, they felt that the little girl was as agile as a leopard cat. Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others were more and more surprised. When Wang Chong first chose Wushang as his fief and built a city here, they didn't think too much about it. But now, no one dared to make such a simple guess. No wonder young master would build a city here. It must be for this Wushang village. Gao Feng muttered to himself. Following beside Wang Chong, he gradually understood that every decision Wang Chong made was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. A little girl of only 8 or 9 years of age already possessed such astonishing talent. Whether it was speed or agility, she far surpassed everyone else. Even Gao Feng and Nia Yan felt that they couldn't keep up with her. It was easy to imagine just how powerful the other people in Wushang village were. Gao Feng and Nia Yan were getting more and more curious about this Wushang village. As they followed the little girl forward, the noise grew louder and louder. Who is it? How dare you trespass into our Wushang village? Suddenly, a thunderous voice came from the distant mountains. Before the voice could fade away, there was a loud rumble and a gust of wind. Before anyone could react, a boulder suddenly grew in size, smashing toward Wang Chong behind the little girl. In the blink of an eye, the rock was above Wang Chong's head. At that moment, everyone could clearly see that it was a huge rock with a diameter of 16 to 17 feet and a weight of 2 to 3,000 caddies. If such a huge rock were to fall, even steel would be dented, let alone flesh and blood. Buzz! When Wang Chong saw this, he smiled inwardly. He didn't even move. In the next moment, waves of air rolled out. The huge rock was still about 10 feet away from Wang Chong when it was stopped in midair by an invisible wall of air. It froze there, motionless. In an instant, there was dead silence in all directions. Even the mountains in the distance were quiet. All eyes were staring at Wang Chong and the huge rock above his head in shock. Even the little girl turned around and looked at him with her mouth wide open. Uncle Jiu, you big idiot, why did you hit my friend? The little girl suddenly turned around and roared angrily at the mountains in the distance. What friend? Little Yan, they're not from the village. Don't be fooled. On the opposite cliff, an exasperated voice sounded. He sounded even angrier than the little girl. Friend, I don't care who you are or what you're here for. Hurry up and get out of here while it's still not too late. Uncle Jiu. Why can't I explain it to you? I already said that he's my friend, and they still have friends with Grandpa. Also, they gave me Wujian grass and know that my fox is called Luoluo. Stop making trouble and let us pass. The little girl put her hands on her hips, her eyes spitting fire. She pointed at the opposite side and scolded angrily. Luoluo. The voice on the other side hesitated for a moment. The voice became softer and softer, and a faint murmur came from afar. How did these guys know? Are they really the chief's friends outside? Not many people in Wushang village knew that the little girl's fox was called Luoluo, but Uncle Jiu happened to be one of them. If he wasn't a villager, he would never know the name Luoluo. Wang Chong stood in the back, silently smiling as he watched the little girl negotiate with her clansmen. So she was like this when she was young. No wonder she grew up to be so hot-tempered. Wang Chong inwardly chuckled. In the distance, the Uncle Gio that the little girl spoke of finally made his choice. Since you know Luoluo, you're at least not bad people. Forget it, I'll let you pass. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure suddenly emerged from a hidden crevice on the smooth cliff under everyone's gazes. Shio, Shio, Shio. That person was like an ape, climbing up the smooth cliff as if he was flying. Every leap was over 30 meters, and the smooth cliff that was hundreds of meters high was as if they were walking on flat ground. They didn't even pause, and in a few blinks of an eye, they immediately disappeared without a trace. On the mountain, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the 10-some guards who had come with Wang Chong from the capital were all dumbstruck. Not even a profound martial realm expert could be so nimble. I can't believe that such an expert could exist in such a remote and desolate place. Just how did they train to such a level? Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others were completely dumbstruck. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have never believed that such an expert could exist in a place like this. Get used to it. These people aren't even the best experts of Wushang, and there are plenty of people like them who can climb mountains and cliffs as if they were walking on flat ground in Wushang village. Wang Chong had a calm expression on his face. The people of Wushang would be his subordinates in the future, so how could he not understand their abilities? Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others had only seen the most ordinary abilities of the people of Wushang. Without this ability, the people of Wushang would never have become the strongest cavalry in the world. Awoo! While the few of them were talking, a series of strange cries that sounded like apes and humans came from afar. In the blink of an eye, one after another, ape-like figures emerged from the seemingly empty mountains. They were either floating in the mountains or climbing up and down the cliffs. One figure after another, with strange howls, emerged from the mountains and appeared before everyone's eyes before quickly disappearing into the distant mountains. The personal attendants behind Wang Chong were completely dumbfounded. The place that Wang Chong had led them into was completely beyond their imagination. Follow them. Wang Chong called out and quickly led everyone to catch up. In front, the little girl's thoughts were not so complicated. While everyone was in a daze, she had already run more than 100 feet. If not for the huge metal box that kept appearing in everyone's field of vision and jolting forward, the little girl would have already disappeared after such a short while. Revisiting an old place, Wang Chong's mood was the most relaxed he had ever felt. Everything here gave him a sense of familiarity, but it was not exactly the same. Ninth uncle should be Fang Xiaoyan's uncle, Fang Jiuqiu. I've heard Fang Xiaoyan say many times that this uncle dotes on her the most. It's a pity that after the catastrophe. Since I'm here this time, I might as well bring him and Fang Xiaoyan out together. This way, I can avoid what happened later and fulfill Fang Xiaoyan's dream. Wang Chong thought to himself, but his footsteps did not slow down at all as he followed closely behind Fang Xiaoyan. Whether it was their attire or their appearance, Wang Chong and his party were completely out of place compared to the people of Wushang village. They were extremely eye-catching, so along the way, there were constantly people who appeared to stop them. At this time, Fang Xiaoyan's influence and status in Wushang village became apparent. No matter who appeared, Fang Xiaoyan carried the metal box that was even larger than her body and put one hand on her waist. She pointed at someone and scolded that person, forcefully scolding them away one by one. She led Wang Chong unimpeded all the way to the center of Wushang village. Along the way, more and more people from Wushang village appeared. Each of them flew up and down as if they were flying. It was a frightening sight. Look over there. When they were still some distance away from the village, a guard suddenly noticed something and shouted, pointing into the distance. When everyone followed the voice, they saw that on the right side of the road, near a steep cliff that was several hundred feet high, 20 to 30 villagers from Wushang village were sweating profusely and training in full swing. Each of these villagers from Wushang village was holding up a massive rock in one hand, constantly exhaling and yelling as they repeatedly raised and trained. These rocks had sharp edges and each one weighed more than 1,000 jin, but in the hands of these villagers from Wushang village, they seemed as light as a feather. Lifting, Pulling, lifting, pulling, these massive rocks were as steady as Mount Tai in their hands, not even trembling in the slightest. Each of them was using this special method to train their bodies, and some of the stronger ones were lifting rocks that weighed 2,000 to 3,000 jin. They were constantly raising and lowering them. These fellows, just where did they come from? Even among the great clans, no one would dare to use this method to train. All the guards behind Wang Chong were dumbfounded. The training method used by the people of Wushang village was one that would make even the illustrious military clans of the Tang dynasty blush with shame. The intensity of their training had definitely surpassed that of many of the great clans of the capital. Even these elites who had participated in the War of the Southwest, who had risked their lives on the battlefield of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, were inwardly flabbergasted. Wang Chong was only indifferent to this, not too surprised. Each place had its own people, and the people of Wushang were situated in the middle of a mountain range. The land was barren, with towering mountains and precipitous ridges everywhere. The environment was harsh. In this sort of environment, adapting to the local conditions was the best choice. Whether it was their ability to traverse the cliffs as if they were flat ground or their ability to use rocks weighing several thousand jin to train their strength, this was the result of cultivating in this sort of environment. Chapter 697. Moreover, Wushang village was isolated from the rest of the world, and the villagers were extremely united. In the army, this quality would become absolute loyalty and obedience, and on the battlefield, it would become excellent teamwork and teamwork. The 5,000 Wushang cavalry came and went like the wind and fought fiercely, their strength far surpassing that of the other soldiers, including the Turkic cavalry and the Uzun Highland Barley soldiers. Moreover, they could coordinate with each other as if they were on their own. If Wang Chong's mastery of the art of war was added to the mix, one could easily imagine the power of this force on the battlefield. This was a force that Wang Chong had always wanted to obtain. The calamity had not yet occurred, so there was still a chance. We're here. The village is up ahead. I still need to give the Wujian grass to 13th granduncle, so I can only bring you up to here. Just as he was deep in thought, the little girl in front of him suddenly spoke. After saying that, she turned around and skipped ahead. There, a group of people from Wushang village had gathered together, and a young man who seemed to be their leader was talking to them. The girl walked over, pointed at Wang Chong's group, and began to chatter with the young man who seemed to be the leader. The young man turned his head to glance in the direction of Wang Chong's group, a sharp light flashing through his eyes. But he quickly turned his head back and nodded, as if agreeing to something with the girl. Ha, seventh brother, I'll leave everything to you. I'll be going first. The girl excitedly called out as she waved at Wang Chong's group. Then, with her large chest on her back, she excitedly walked off in another direction. In just a few moments, she had vanished into the rubble. Get ready. There might be a fierce battle coming up. Wang Chong suddenly said. Ah. But didn't that girl already tell us what to do? Gao Feng and Nia Yen were flabbergasted. On their journey here, they had already gotten used to the girl clearing the path for them. All the people who came up to investigate had been blocked by her. Why did they have to attack the moment they left? Don't worry too much. Just do as I say. Wang Chong said faintly. He flicked his sleeves and did not panic. With a smile, he took the initiative to walk towards the group of Wushang youths on the square made of stone slabs. Wushang's trip had come to an end here. Wang Chong knew very well that his words and the box full of Wujian grass were as good as it got. What's more, the person he met was a guy with sharp observation skills. On the opposite side, the seventh brother, the little girl mentioned, also strode over. However, unlike the gentleness he displayed in front of the little girl, seventh brother's expression was much sharper and colder in front of everyone. Surround them. Seventh brother waved his hand, and the first thing he did was surround Wang Chong and the others. Swoosh! The group of Wushang youths who had been following him leaped up as if they were flying. In an instant, they had surrounded Wang Chong, Gao Feng, Niayen, and the dozen or so guards from the capital. Careful! Clang, clang, clang. Cold light unsheathed. Almost at the same time, the expressions of Gao Feng, Niayen, and the others changed, and they immediately moved to protect Wang Chong. Seventh brother glanced at the swords in the hands of Gao Feng, Niayen, and the others, his eyes full of contempt. The outsiders that ninth uncle and the others spoke of are you, right? Friends of the patriarch, your words can only deceive Xiaoyan. Recently, the village has captured several outsiders. You're probably here for them, right? Seventh brother's gaze was extremely sharp. With a glance, he could see into the hearts of Wang Chong and the others. Hearing this, Gao Feng, Niayen, and the others paled. I was right, wasn't I? Put down your weapons and surrender, and I'll spare your lives. Otherwise, I'll kill them all. His last words were directed at his companions from Wushang village. You dare! Do you know who our young master is? To dare attack an official of the imperial court is a capital offense. Before Wang Chong could say anything, Gao Feng, Niayen, and the others could no longer hold themselves back, and the other guards also showed signs of anger. Wang Chong was from a clan of ministers and generals, the young marquis that the Holy Emperor had personally conferred upon him. Everyone in the world knew that he was the son of heaven's disciple and had an incredibly revered status. These people actually dared to kill the nobles of the imperial court at the slightest provocation. They were simply tyrannical and lawless. I don't know about the imperial court or not. I only know that this is our Wushang village. You've intruded into our village and even brought weapons, so you must die. As ninth brother spoke, his eyes turned even colder. He raised a hand and waved it into the distance. Swish swish swish. On the distant practice grounds and the nearby cliffs, the bare-chested Wushang soldiers began to fly over, their gazes cold. They moved with incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, the area around Wang Chong's group began to flicker, and the number of people surrounding them increased by several times. Gao Feng, Niayen, and the others all had cold expressions and were infuriated. From the stance of these people, they actually dared to attack them. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would have never dared to believe that there was such an arrogant faction in the Central Plains that completely disregarded the laws and dignity of the imperial court. Enough! Just when Gao Feng and the others were about to lose their patience, Wang Chong extended a hand and held them back. Leave this matter to me. The people of Wushang were a staunch and honest character that was publicly acknowledged by later generations. A fierce horse would never be so easily tamed, and this was even more true of the people of Wushang. Although Gao Feng and the others found this hard to accept, to Wang Chong, this was the true character of the people of Wushang. Qin Chicheng, you really haven't changed at all. Wang Chong faintly smiled, his first words causing the expression of seventh brother to change. Just who are you? How do you know my name? Qin Chicheng's pupils constricted, his expression extremely stern. Not only do I know that your name is Qin Chicheng, but I also know that you often violate the rules of the village and sneak out of the village. Wang Chong smiled. Nonsense. Qin Chicheng's expression changed dramatically, and the corners of his eyes twitched uncontrollably as if his secrets had been exposed. Brothers, take them down. Before the others could act, Qin Chicheng's body crouched slightly, and he shot forward like a venomous snake. Without any warning, steel clattered, and a ring of light fell from his body. In an instant, thick smoke rolled out and enveloped his body, blocking Wang Chong's line of sight. Whoosh! 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 In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black hand shot out of the thick smoke, leaving behind countless afterimages as it stabbed 3 times. Although it was just an ordinary body of flesh and blood, the sound of the 5 fingers stabbing out was like the sound of a sharp metal blade, and the slender fingers had a sword aura more than a foot long spitting out. If he was stabbed by these 5 fingers, Wang Chong had no doubt that even steel would be pierced through 5 holes. Ring of illusionary smoke. Hand of Darkness. Wang Chong recognized at a glance that these were the two high-level techniques of Wushang village. The ring of illusionary smoke could confuse the opponent's vision, but it did not affect the cultivator in the slightest. Instead, it would increase one's agility and attack speed. The Hand of Darkness could only be used in conjunction with the ring of illusionary smoke. Once it was used, the entire arm would be as black as ink and incomparably sharp, like a sword. Once one's vision was confused by the black smoke, it was very easy for the opponent to deal a fatal blow and kill them instantly. Many of the people who had invaded Wushang village had died to this move. But to Wang Chong, this move was like showing off in front of an expert. Bang! With just one kick, before Qin Shicheng could even get close, he was kicked into the air by Wang Chong. With a rumble, he landed 7 or 8 zhang away, sending rubble flying. When, in that instant, the surroundings were completely silent. All of the Wushang villagers looked at Wang Chong, who stood out like a crane among chickens, with deep shock in their eyes. Although Qin Shicheng was not the strongest or the most powerful person in Wushang village, among his peers, he was definitely one of the more powerful experts. Moreover, it was not that the ring of illusionary smoke and the Hand of Darkness had never failed, but it was definitely not like this, where they had been defeated in one move. Most people did not even have the chance to see through the ring of illusionary smoke and the Hand of Darkness before they were already heavily injured and captured. Where did Xiao Yan bring these people from? The ring of illusionary smoke and the Hand of Darkness cannot be so easily defeated. This kid is strange. Everyone, be careful. Don't be careless. From all directions, the Wushang villagers looked at Wang Chong and the others with a completely different gaze than before. The youth in front of them, who looked to be only 17 or 18 years old, had a faint smile on his lips. Although he was young, he gave off the feeling that he could see through all of their tricks. This made all of the Wushang villagers feel that it was extremely inconceivable. Boom! With a loud bang, Qin Shicheng, who was 7 or 8 zhang away, suddenly stood up from the ground with a carp flip. His gaze was as sharp as a sword as he locked onto Wang Chong. Impossible. I don't believe it. This is definitely a coincidence. Let's go again. Qin Shicheng gritted his teeth. Wang Chong's kick had greatly provoked him. With so many people watching, he could not maintain his dignity at all. He's still not as steady as before. Wang Chong could not help but laugh in his heart. After more than 20 years, the current Qin Shicheng was far from being as steady and insightful as before. He also lacked the strategic planning and calm leadership that came from experience. But this Shicheng is even more interesting. Wang Chong thought. He was used to seeing Qin Shicheng by his side, steady and mature. Suddenly seeing his old friend's reckless and impulsive appearance when he was young was a different kind of feeling. Boom! On the other side, Qin Shicheng did not know what Wang Chong was thinking. When he saw this outsider's smile, he only felt more and more angry and disgusted. Divine Ape Art. Qin Shicheng took a step forward, and black smoke surged out from all of his acupoints. In the next moment, his aura suddenly changed, and with a series of cracking sounds, his strength rose by several levels. From nimbleness, agility, and leaping, he became as heavy as a mountain. Roar! Chapter 698. In that instant, Qin Shicheng seemed to have become a completely different person. His entire being was different from before. He became tyrannical, dangerous, and filled with the desire to invade and attack. The Divine Ape technique was a divine technique that had been passed down in Wushang village for hundreds of years. It was a technique created based on the giant apes in the mountains. It could greatly increase a person's strength, agility, and speed. In Wushang village, this technique was of a much higher level than the ring of illusionary smoke and the Hand of Darkness. Roar! Qin Shicheng waved his hand and immediately merged with the divine ape formed by the black smoke behind him. Boom! Before he arrived, the technique arrived first. Qin Shicheng grabbed a huge rock that weighed more than 2,000 kilograms and threw it at Wang Chong as if it was weightless. Following closely behind the huge rock, Qin Shicheng pounced at Wang Chong like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. Boom! The huge rock was thrown down, and the same scene happened again. The huge rock was still dozens of feet away from Wang Chong when it was held up by an invisible force. It floated steadily in the air like Mount Tai. The divine ape technique. His stellar energy is leaking so much. It's obvious that he hasn't cultivated it to perfection. Wang Chong closed his eyes slightly and looked at Qin Shicheng, who was following closely behind the huge rock. His expression did not change at all. The divine ape that Qin Shicheng had transformed into had a crazy, tyrannical, and impactful aura, but it seemed to have no effect on him at all. Qi. Just as the divine ape that Qin Shicheng had transformed into rushed over and smashed down with its huge ape arm, Wang Chong's eyes opened slightly, and a bright light flashed in them. In that instant, Wang Chong moved from stillness and suddenly pointed a finger at the Moji acupuncture point under Qin Shicheng's armpit. In that instant, Qin Shicheng's body froze like a punctured rubber ball. The black smoke around his body dissipated, and the huge divine ape quickly returned to its original appearance. Impossible. Who are you? Qin Shicheng's body staggered and retreated. His eyes were completely fixed on Wang Chong, and they were filled with fear and disbelief. Wushang village had very little contact with the outside world, so outsiders had no way of knowing the martial arts here. Most of the people who invaded Wushang village didn't even understand the martial arts of Wushang village before they were captured or seriously injured. However, the feeling that Wang Chong gave him was as if he knew all of his secrets and flaws. The mighty ape art of Wushang village was no secret to him. In the beginning, Wang Chong gave him the impression that he was an unwelcome outsider, but now, in Qin Shicheng's eyes, these outsiders had become unfathomable. At the end of every month, the Yujing acupoint, Yuanchuan acupoint, and Longqi acupoint must be in unbearable pain. This is because you didn't cultivate properly, causing your qi to divert. Try circulating your qi through the Pan Sha, Yongquan, and Longwei acupoints. In about 3 days, you should be able to solve the problem of your stellar energy diverting and your meridians convulsing. Wang Chong faintly smiled. Qin Shicheng's eyes widened, and he looked as if he had seen a ghost. Impossible. Impossible. This was absolutely impossible. Qin Shicheng's mind rumbled like thunder. Even the fact that Wang Chong had broken through his mighty ape art with one finger was far less of an impact than these few words. The mighty ape art had flaws, and according to each person's talent, aptitude, and cultivation situation, the flaws were also different. Furthermore, no one would tell their own flaws to others. This meant that everyone was the only one who knew where their flaws were. The Yujing, Yuanchuan, and Longqi acupoints, Qin Shicheng hadn't even told the people closest to him about these 3 acupoints. How did this 16 or 17-year-old youth know that these were his weaknesses? Moreover, these 3 acupoints would only act up at the end of the month. This was something that only those who had cultivated the mighty ape art would know. How did this person know? At this moment, Qin Shicheng suddenly had a feeling that he had never felt before. His scalp was going to explode. How dare you attack Brother Shicheng? Everyone, let's attack together and kill them. Before Qin Shicheng could open his mouth, an angry voice suddenly came from the side. The people of Wushang village were the most united. Seeing that Qin Shicheng had suffered at the hands of Wang Chong twice in a row, everyone was filled with righteous indignation and anger. It wasn't clear who was the first to pounce, but then a second, a third, a fourth. From all directions, figures pounced one after another. Black smoke billowed, and metal clanged. Halos that were completely different from those of the outside world were released from the bodies of these Wushang villagers and fell down. Halo of mystifying smoke, hand of darkness, mighty ape art, wood vine art, giant rock ring. Halos accompanied by stellar energy of various colors were released from the bodies of these Wushang villagers. Be careful. Protect the young master. Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and a group of guards all pulled out their sabers and swords. Their expressions were tense as they guarded around Wang Chong. Roar! A series of roars came from all directions. However, the first wave of attacks were large boulders that weighed thousands of jin. These boulders tumbled through the air, whistling through the air as they came crashing down toward the group. At this moment, all the guards who had experienced the War of the Southwest revealed nervous expressions. Even in their view, the strength of the Wushang villagers made them extremely powerful opponents. With so many of the Wushang villagers working together to attack, everyone instantly felt an enormous pressure. They all sensed the thick stench of death. This obscure little place on the Silk Road to the west was definitely as dangerous as a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. Gao Feng, Nia Yan, the two of you just need to protect yourselves. Leave these people to me. Just when the mood was at its most tense, Wang Chong's calm voice resounded through the air. In an instant, everyone felt a surge of power that made them feel at ease. Rumble. A powerful wave of energy exploded from Wang Chong's body, sweeping through the north, south, east, and west. All the falling boulders were still several zhang away when they were frozen in place in the air. Kill him. Charging into our Wushang village and still acting so arrogantly, even daring to attack seventh brother. Does he really think we can't deal with him? Don't be rash. Capture him and hand him over to the clan leader. With furious howls, the powerful and ferocious Wushang villagers charged at Wang Chong. Although they were not carrying any weapons, their fingers, palms, arms, and bodies had all been trained to be as tough as steel. Young master. Gao Feng's panicked voice came from behind him. Don't be in such a rush. Wang Chong's voice was as calm as ever. As he gazed at the Wushang descending from the sky, his lips curled into an even wider smile, his voice calm and confident. Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. A voice that was neither loud nor soft resounded in everyone's ears. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong used the #1 evil art of the Central Plains. Aya! There were cries of alarm as the powerful Wushang villagers began to spin in the air like kites with their strings cut. Not a single one of the Wushang villagers could land, and not a single one of them could struggle free of this suction. The 40-some Wushang villagers floated in the air like puppets controlled by strings. Cries of alarm filled the air, and even the guards behind Wang Chong were stunned by this sight. Compared to the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong's strength was even more profound, more powerful, and more unfathomable. The 40-some Wushang villagers, who were at least at the true martial or profound martial realm, floated in the air, spinning around and around, faster and fiercer, all of them unable to control themselves. This was a shocking sight to behold. Marquis is getting stronger and stronger. In the rear, the guards who had followed Wang Chong from the capital looked up at the sky in shock. The Wushang villagers had seen how easily they could traverse the cliffs and walls, and they had also seen how they could use boulders weighing several thousand jin to train. All of them had prepared themselves for a fierce battle. But to everyone's surprise, Wang Chong's one move had sent these fierce Wushang flying into the air, all of them sucked in. Not a single one of them had been able to get through. They had prepared themselves for a major battle, only to discover that Wang Chong had single-handedly dealt with all of them. Marquis' strength, truly is advancing by leaps and bounds. It's unfathomable. Everyone was stunned. Bang bang bang. On the other side, Wang Chong paid no attention to the people behind him. He stood motionless, looking up at the sky, the smile on his lips growing wider. The great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art could not only be used to devour the energy of an opponent, but it could also be transformed into a powerful martial art technique. This enormous suction force could push around any martial artist who was weaker than oneself, moving them around and toying with them in the palm of one's hand. The Wushang villagers were brave and fierce by nature, the best warriors on the battlefield. Wang Chong had even better plans for them, so he naturally would not suck away their inner energy and heavily injure them. My leg. Damn it, my inner energy is in complete chaos. I can't move at all. Mine is the same. My inner energy has completely gone awry. Bastard, just what kind of evil art did you use? Tell the clan elder. Quickly tell the clan elder to have Granduncle Gio and the others come. These people are too strong. We can't deal with them. Several dozen Wushang villagers fell to the ground, their eyes filled with panic. Their injuries were not heavy, but their inner energy had completely gone awry. This made them feel even more uneasy and shocked than when Wang Chong had heavily injured them. This had completely surpassed their understanding of martial arts. Bastard! Who are you people? Just what do you want in our village? Chapter 699. What am I doing? Didn't I say it already? I'm looking for a few friends. Wang Chong faintly smiled. Although Qin Jiucheng's martial arts were not bad, he was not the Qin Jiucheng of the future. In the Wushang Iron Cavalry, Qin Jiucheng was ranked last among the 10 generals under Wang Chong. If he wanted to grow into the future Lord Jiu, who could devise strategies, he would probably need some time. Now was not the time to talk or interact with him too deeply. Let's go. Wang Chong waved his hand and stepped over the Wushang villagers, continuing forward. If he wanted to recruit the Wushang villagers, he had to go through the Wushang village chief, who was also the grandfather of the little girl, Fang Xiaoyan. You still dare to be so impudent in our Wushang village? Do you really think this is still your territory? Just when Wang Chong was about to step past the Wushang villagers and enter the village, a bone-chilling voice rang out in his ear. You're right, Wang Chong. In that instant, it was as if they had gone from a hot summer to a cold winter. Everyone felt their bodies shiver. Then, they saw a huge stone fall from the sky, smashing towards Wang Chong. What is that? A guard suddenly cried out involuntarily. At first glance, everyone thought that it was a huge stone. However, when the stone opened its fingers, everyone suddenly realized that it was not a stone at all, but a huge stone palm. Boom! The stone fist smashed down, and the earth shook. Billowing dust rose into the sky and spread everywhere. In front of the stone fist, Wang Chong's robes fluttered. He stood not far away and dodged the attack by a hair's breadth. It's him. Wang Chong squinted his eyes and looked up at the sky. There was a solemn look in his eyes, completely different from the relaxed look he had before. In that instant, everyone could clearly see that what appeared in front of Wang Chong was not a huge rock, but a 30-meter-tall stone giant that looked like a military general. When everyone looked up, the giant only had one hand and one leg. But in the next moment, the cliffs on both sides rumbled loudly. Cracks appeared on the precipitous cliffs, and soon, huge rocks broke out of the cliffs under the control of an invisible force, flying towards the stone giant's right shoulder along with countless gravel. Rumble! In the blink of an eye, an identical stone arm appeared out of thin air. The assembly was complete, and it appeared before everyone's eyes. Arms, right leg, and left ear. In a short period of time, the stone giant was completely formed. Everyone raised their heads, seeing clearly that this was a giant that looked like an ancient general. His body was covered in stone armor, his expression dignified, making one feel intimidated. Furthermore, he was over 30 meters tall, which made everyone look like ants beneath his feet, tiny and minuscule. Stone General. As this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, he instantly recognized him. Stone General was one of the best martial arts of Wushang village. It could control all the rocks in a radius of 100 zhang, transforming one into a stone giant that looked like an ancient general. This was the Stone General. This martial art was extremely powerful, and the stone general that it transformed into was extremely powerful, belonging to the imperial martial realm. Moreover, as long as there was a large amount of stone around, the stone general could be constantly repaired. This also meant that those who cultivated the stone general were basically invincible. Moreover, with such thick stone armor, no weapon would be able to truly injure the martial artist inside the stone general. This was one of the powerful aspects of the stone general martial art. Wushang village was surrounded on all sides by towering mountains and precipitous ridges. What it didn't lack the least was hard stone. Thus, in this sort of environment, the stone general's greatest power could be displayed. But this wasn't the only thing that Wang Chong cared about. There weren't many people in Wushang village that could use the stone general, and Wang Chong could only think of one person who could do so. Huang Badian, one of Wushang village's outermost protectors. Before the great calamity, anyone who charged into the heart of the village would first encounter Huang Badian. Of the many protectors of Wushang village, his stone general was the most superb. He was a classic example of an imperial martial expert, and his strength was far above Qin Chicheng's. He was one of the backbone forces of Wushang village. When the otherworldly invaders attacked Wushang village, he had used Wushang village's unique geographical advantage to block 5,000 or 6,000 of them, almost single-handedly guarding a single position. In Wushang village, this person had been rather difficult to deal with. Alas, Huang Badian later died in battle during the Great Calamity. He was one of the first core forces of Wushang village to die in battle. I didn't think that I'd run into a martial maniac. Wang Chong raised his head and gazed at the towering, powerful, 30-meter stone general. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't feel the slightest fear. Back when Fang Xiaoyan hadn't reached the peak of the martial path, she would occasionally bicker with him about this stone general of hers, her protector uncle Huang Badian, who had reached the acme of perfection. Although his strength was astonishing and he hated foreigners to the core, deep in his heart, Huang Badian was a true man. He was addicted to martial arts, and his greatest weakness was that anyone who could withstand 3 of his moves would obtain his favorable impression. Anyone who could defeat him would rapidly change Huang Boshan's attitude toward them. No matter where they came from, no matter if they were good or evil, Huang Badian would immediately treat them as a brother, acknowledge them, and treat them as one of his own. There was once an expert of the Uzan who had been chased by experts of the Tang dynasty and accidentally stumbled into Wushang village. In the end, he fought a great battle with Huang Badian. Huang Badian actually defended him in every possible way, and in the end, he almost ended up fighting with one of his own people. In the end, the villagers had no choice but to let him go. He clearly knew that his opponent was an Uzan who had appeared in the Tang dynasty with ill intentions, but Huang Badian still did so. From this, one could imagine just how ferocious his martial obsession was. However, although Huang Boshan's personality was well known in Wushang village, almost no outsider knew of it. Even Fang Xiaoyan, who liked to bicker with him, would never have imagined that he would one day have to fight with her protector uncle. This is going to be interesting. If I can withstand 3 moves, I can win his favorable impression. Wang Chong thought to himself as he gazed at the massive stone general. He seemed to be able to see through the layers of stone armor to the chest of the stone general, where a mysterious middle-aged man was sizing him up. To be honest, Wang Chong was quite curious about this protector uncle Fang Xiaoyan spoke of, who had a strange personality, who was addicted to martial arts, and who had ultimately died in the Great Calamity. Many of the experts of Wushang village had died in the Great Calamity. To Wang Chong, this was actually quite a pity. You're quite fast, but do you think you can outrun me? The stone general's voice was full of energy, like a great bell ringing down from above. Just as Wang Chong was thinking, the giant stone howled as Huang Badian sucked up a boulder from the ground and, with a thunderous boom, smashed it toward Wang Chong. The first boulder was still in the air when Huang Badian stomped down, causing the earth to crack. Boulders weighing several thousand jin were sucked into the hands of the 30-meter-tall stone general and then shot toward Wang Chong like cannonballs. A second boulder, a third, a fourth, boulder after boulder flew toward Wang Chong like a barrage of cannons. In the howling winds, a boulder flew over Wang Chong's head, enveloping even Gao Feng and Nia Yan in its path. Huang Boshan's attack was clearly not just directed at Wang Chong. All the intruders were treated the same. Careful! The guards were getting more and more shocked as they dodged in every direction. This Wushang village was shrouded in mysteries, and they were getting more and more astonished. Those villagers who could move as if they were flying could be ignored, but now, a random person had appeared who could control the earth element of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The feeling he gave off was not one bit inferior to Longqinba, the leader of the 5 tiger generals under Uzun Great General Hushu Wuzong's command in the War of the Southwest. It would have been fine if Wushang village was some famous strategic town, but this place just had to be remote and desolate. If not for Marquis mentioning it and bringing them here, they would have never even known that such a place existed. Thus, it was easy to imagine the shock the crowd felt when an imperial martial expert had casually appeared out of nowhere. "There's no need to worry. Leave this stone giant to me." At their most panicked and uneasy moment, Wang Chang's reassuring voice rang out in their ears. "Who?" The 1,000-gene boulder that was originally smashing towards Gao Feng and the others suddenly shook in the air when it was still several zhang away from them. With a schwa, it drew an arc in the air and actually turned around. Its speed did not decrease, and it smashed towards the mountain-like stone general in front of them. Buzz! All the villagers of Wushang were stunned, and even Huang Bashi's stone general clearly trembled. It was clear that even this martial maniac of Wushang's outer protector was shocked by Wang Chang's move. "Ha! If I were you, I would never use this move." Wang Chang's laughter was still echoing through the air when a second, third, and fourth boulder began to howl through the air. With a flick of Wang Chang's finger, they all shot back at the stone general with astonishing speed. Not a single one of the boulders that Huang Batian had thrown out had been able to pose any real threat to him. Damn it! Huang Batian was infuriated. With a fierce punch, he sent Wang Chang's boulder-smashing fist back at him. He had lived in Wushang for so long, but he had never encountered such a situation. "I truly underestimated you. It seems like a little move like this is completely useless against you. But you really shouldn't have used such a method to provoke me. I've stood guard here for so long, but no one has ever dared to act so impudently in front of me. Now, pay the price." Chapter 700. As soon as the stone spear appeared, an invisible energy began to transform it. The inside of the stone grew denser and denser, and the stone powder on its surface began to scatter, revealing a spiral pattern. Bang! In a flash of lightning, the giant stone spear smashed into the ground where Wang Chong had been standing, leaving a giant hole in the ground. Pieces of stone flew dozens of feet into the air, and dust filled the air. "You think you can escape?" The stone general's thunderous voice resounded through the world. Just as Wang Chong leapt up to dodge, the stone general closed in. With a speed and agility that didn't seem to match its massive body, it punched at Wang Chong. Before the fist even got close, its enormous strength left a long ripple in the air. Everything in a radius of several dozen feet emitted a teeth-aching sound, and everything began to twist. If one were to be struck by this fist, there was no doubt that they would be smashed to smithereens. "Ha ha ha, Protector Huang, your stone general truly has reached perfection, but alas, it's still lacking in maturity." Wang Chong had been heartily laughing when he first spoke, but his last words had become incomparably cold and solemn. Bang! In the blink of an eye, countless people watched as Wang Chong's robes fluttered in the wind, a smile on his lips. Amidst Huang Boshan's attacks, he seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll through the park, constantly dodging Huang Boshan's attacks. But at the last moment, Wang Chong suddenly stood on the tip of his right foot and stepped on the stone general's giant fist. Bang! With this light step, the stone general's fist was pulled down by a tremendous force. With a boom, Wang Chong's foot landed on the ground, sending up a cloud of dust. Buzz! All the Wushang villagers who saw this scene widened their eyes. Huang Batian was the outermost protector of Wushang village, and his strength was obvious to all. People had tried to force their way into Wushang before, but most of them had been stopped as far as Huang Batian. No one had ever managed to tear off Huang Boshan's right arm. "It's useless. You're no match for me here." Huang Boshan's voice was as cold and solemn as ever. Even though one of his arms had been torn off, it didn't affect him in the slightest. Rumble. Just as Wang Chang's right arm was about to fall, Huang Boshan's stone general thrust the spear in his left hand at Wang Chong. At the same time, cracking sounds could be heard as countless rubble began to rise from the ground and fly toward Huang Boshan's right arm. In the blink of an eye, an identical stone arm had taken shape. Boom! His 5 fingers flexed, and Huang Boshan's second fist smashed towards Wang Chong. Boom! 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 Huang Batian was thoroughly enraged. His fists, along with his spear, rained down upon Wang Chong. Everything within a radius of several thousand feet was within the range of his attack. Each of Huang Boshan's fists carried several thousand jin of weight. Even steel would be pulverized by a single punch from him, let alone a body of flesh and blood. And what was even more dreadful was that the stone general was incredibly fast. When combined with its immense strength, it was enough to make any opponent pale in comparison. I want to see just how long you can dodge for. Huang Batian sneered. Cracking. His right hand grasped out, and in the blink of an eye, another 50-meter-long stone spear was pulled out from the ground. With these 2 spears in hand, the stone general's attack speed and threat multiplied. But no matter how ferocious Huang Boshan's attacks were, Wang Chang's voice remained as calm as ever, clearly echoing through the rain of stone spears. I'm not dodging. I'm just seeing the stone general. Since you want to fight with me, I'll do as you wish. As he spoke, Wang Chong suddenly changed his usual demeanor. Thump. Wang Chong pushed off the ground and shot forward like an arrow, instantly piercing through the gaps in Huang Boshan's storm of attacks and heading straight for the stone general's chest. Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. On the stone general's chest, Wang Chong's fingers were spread wide like a sword. His palm holding his body up, he thrust it deep into the stone general's chest. The great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art that he had inherited from the evil emperor was instantly activated, causing a massive attractive force to erupt. The little Yin-Yang Art required physical contact and the little Yin-Yang sword, as well as a host of other restrictions. But the great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art was different. Wang Chong didn't even need to touch his opponent to be able to absorb their energy. Buzz! Under countless shocked gazes, the 30-meter-tall stone general maintained its ferocious attack at the last moment, but its entire body was frozen in place, motionless. Impossible! Just what evil art did you use? A middle-aged man's panic-stricken and shocked voice exploded from the stone general's chest. The moment Wang Chong activated the great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art, the stellar energy in his body began to wildly surge out. Even more frightening was that he instantly lost control of the stellar energy in his body. His entire body was trapped within the stone general, unable to move. Rumble. In a place that no one could see, boundless waves of stellar energy flowed into Wang Chong's body. With the support of Huang Boshan's internal energy, Wang Chong's already formidable internal energy soared once more, charging towards an even higher realm. Not good. Protector is in danger. There's something strange about this outsider. Everyone, attack together. Hurry and help Protector deal with him. Seeing Huang Batian restrained, the people of Wushang village began to panic. There was not a single person who had come to Wushang village who did not have their tail between their legs. Many outsiders had been captured without the Protector even needing to appear. But now, even the Protector had been captured. To the people of Wushang village, this was an unacceptable and unimaginable development. Form the formation. Protect young master. At the same time, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and a group of elite guards also began to move. In the blink of an eye, before the rest of the Wushang villagers could arrive to help, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the 10-some elite guards had already formed a small and tight formation. This was the Dragon Snake formation that Wang Chong had created after the Southwestern War. The Dragon Snake array did not require many people. A dozen or so people would be able to form a small-scale dragon snake array. It could be used for both offense and defense. Furthermore, it could condense the strength of a dozen or so people into one. Like a sharp knife, it could unleash strength that far exceeded normal standards. Whether it was a group attack or an expert far stronger than oneself, the dragon snake formation could unleash its greatest power. But the dragon snake formation had extremely high demands on the soldiers. Not only did it require the soldiers themselves to reach an extremely high level of strength, it also required excellent teamwork. Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others were precisely the dragon snake teams that had been trained to the highest level after Wang Chong had created the dragon snake formation. They were also the most capable and the strongest. This was also why Wang Chong had brought them with him into Wushang village. Kill! Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others swiftly formed the formation. In the distance, the other members of Wushang village also noticed this and began to charge over. Both sides were seething with killing intent, and it seemed like a fierce battle was about to break out. But at this moment... Stop! A voice floated down from the sky. The fingers of Wang Chong's right hand moved slightly, and he shot back from the stone general's chest like lightning. He swayed lightly in the air, slowed down, and landed lightly on the ground without stirring up a speck of dust. As Wang Chong landed on the ground, countless rocks fell from the sky with a rumble. The 30-meter-tall stone general instantly collapsed, leaving only 2 legs and half of its body standing on the ground. And where the stone general's chest had been, the rocks collapsed, revealing a middle-aged man in his 30s. His face was weathered, and he looked extremely steady-going. Enforcer Huang, can we end this battle? Wang Chong looked up at the middle-aged man and smiled faintly. His expression was relaxed, and his bearing was calm. If not for the fact that the ground was in ruins and there were rolling boulders everywhere, it would be hard to believe that he had just experienced an intense battle. The battlefield was deathly silent. Even the charging villagers of Wushang and Qinqicheng stopped and stared at the two in a daze. The ground was silent. The middle-aged man sat on the tall, broken stone general, looking down at Wang Chong. His eyes flickered, and no one could tell what he was thinking. At this moment, no one in Wushang knew what had just happened except for Wang Chong and Huang Batian. The reason the great yin-yang heaven creation art was known as the #1 evil art in the world, even one of the most powerful and legendary of the 10 great arts of the Central Plains, was not just because it was so powerful that it could easily defeat anyone of the same level, but also because anyone who cultivated the great yin-yang heaven creation art could easily challenge opponents a level higher than them, or even several levels higher. Many experts of the martial Dao world, even if they were stronger and stronger than those who cultivated the great yin-yang heaven creation art, would ultimately suffer a crushing defeat and die at the hands of those who cultivated the great yin-yang heaven creation art. One could easily imagine the fame and ferocity of the world's #1 evil art. However, Wang Chong had come to subjugate the villagers of Wushang, not to kill them. Thus, Wang Chong had controlled his energy this entire time. He had sucked Huang Boshan's energy back into his body, making it impossible for him to control the stone general. Buzz! Wang Chong looked up at the stone general. The middle-aged man's mouth opened and closed, but before he could say anything, the situation suddenly changed. Bang! Chapter 701. In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong had returned to normal. He turned his gaze to the cliff on his right. But at this moment, several large boulders tumbled down the cliff like bolts of lightning, crashing around Wang Chong. Wang Chong didn't care at first, but after taking 2 steps forward, his vision suddenly darkened and everything vanished. Wang Chong's expression instantly changed. At almost the same time, there was a flash of light and 2 figures flew down from the cliff. One was a yellow-robed elder in his 50s with graying sideburns. The other was a middle-aged woman in her 40s with a beauty mark at the corner of her eye. Badian, hurry and leave. I've already used an array to temporarily trap him. Hurry and call the patriarch and elders to deal with him. Ruorong, are you all right? The yellow-robed elder supported the middle-aged woman, his face full of concern. Wansher, Badian, be careful. This young man is very strange. My psychic thorns rarely fail, but when I use my psychic energy to deal with him, I only manage to control him for a moment before suffering a mental backlash. I've never encountered such a situation before. The middle-aged woman's face was pale and she seemed to be in great pain. Elder Du, Elder Fong, Yu, Huang Batian stood on top of the damaged stone general, hesitating to speak. In truth, Wang Chong had already shown him mercy. Unfortunately, Elder Du and Elder Fong had arrived too quickly. Before he could say anything, Elder Fong had already attacked him with the psychic thorns, while Elder Du had thrown down the boulders and formed an array to trap him within. Huang Batian was now riding a tiger, and it was already too late to say anything. Ha ha ha, what a powerful array. Being able to see it today made this trip worth it. Just at this moment, a familiar voice suddenly rang out in their ears. The three of them trembled and turned their heads at the same time. They saw a familiar voice. His robes fluttered in the wind, and he looked valiant and heroic as he calmly walked out from the formation. Behind him, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others also walked out. All was silent. Elder Du, Elder Fong, and Huang Batian on top of the stone general were all stunned, their eyes filled with disbelief. This is impossible. It's impossible for anyone to escape from my four symbols yin-yang soul trap so quickly. Old Man Du was dumbfounded, as if he had received a huge shock. On the two sides, Huang Batian, Elder Fong, and the other villagers of Wushang who knew about the four symbols yin-yang soul bewildering formation felt waves of shock in their hearts. The four symbols yin-yang soul trap was the most powerful formation in Wushang village. Throughout history, only a few people could master it, and they would only use it when they encountered a very powerful opponent. The four symbols yin-yang soul trap contained the 8 gates of life, injury, rest, stop, and view. Moreover, it would change with time. If one were to accidentally step on the wrong spot, it would be a dead end. As for the exit formation, that was something only Elder Du and the others in control of formations knew about. Even Huang Batian would find it very difficult to escape if he were trapped in a formation. What's going on? No one knows how to get out of the four symbols yin-yang soul trap. Is he really related to the patriarch? Huang Boshan's eyes flickered with bewilderment. The news that a group of outsiders had followed Fang Xiaoyan into the village had long since reached him. As the village's protector, he was well aware of anyone who entered or left the village. These people could only deceive a little girl like Fang Xiaoyan. Huang Batian had never believed them from start to finish. But now, as he watched Wang Chong so easily walk out of the formation, Huang Boshan's faith was shaken. For Wang Chong to be able to walk out so quickly meant that he definitely knew how to get out. If he didn't have an inextricable relationship with the village, then none of this could be explained. Elder Du, Badian, leave first. I'll deal with him. The middle-aged woman called Elder Fong nervously said. Right now, she was the only one who could obstruct Wang Chong. Wait a moment. Elder Du, Elder Fong, these people aren't bad people. The wind howled as Huang Batian hurriedly jumped down from the damaged stone general and tried to stop them. If they really harbored evil intentions, they would have already attacked me. Batian, what nonsense are you spouting? Do you not differentiate between friend and foe? Damn it, don't you see the time? Why are you acting like a martial idiot at a time like this? Elder Du and Elder Fong knew that Huang Boshan's old habits had flared up. Although Huang Batian was powerful, as long as anyone defeated him, this fellow would unscrupulously favor the other party and treat them as his friends. The most typical manifestation of this was this person isn't a bad person, or these people aren't bad people. Every time Huang Batian acted up, the entire village would have a headache. But he just had to be stubborn, leaving everyone at their wits' end. Elder Fong, Elder Du, this isn't a martial idiot. Since he was able to break the 4 symbols yin-yang soul trap, he definitely isn't an ordinary outsider. Moreover, didn't they follow Xiao Yan in? If they harbored evil intentions, how could Xiao Yan still be safe and sound? And hasn't no one died in the village yet? Huang Badian said. Elder Du and Elder Fang were dumbfounded. Ha, Protector Huang understands that I have no ill intentions. Otherwise, given my strength, everyone should also understand that Wushang village wouldn't be in its current state. Wang Chong heartily laughed, and as he spoke, he began to slowly walk toward the trio. Wang Chong's eyes brightened as he glanced at Elder Fang and Elder Du that Huang Batian had spoken of. Wushang village truly was a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. One could casually use a powerful array, while the other had extremely powerful psychic energy. These were extremely rare in the martial world, but Wushang village had 2 of them. Let him in. All of you, withdraw. Suddenly, a dignified and aged voice rang out from within the village. The voice was loud and clear like a great bell. Everyone trembled when they heard this voice, and all the villagers of Wushang revealed expressions of extreme respect. It's the chief. Elder Du and Elder Fang glanced at each other, then turned to glance at Wang Chong with complicated expressions. Although they were unwilling, the chief had spoken. No matter how unwilling they were, they had no choice but to step aside. Young man, I don't care where you come from or what your background is, but you'd best be smart here and not act rashly. Didn't you want to see our chief? Go on in. As Elder Du and Elder Fang spoke, they stepped to the side and opened up a path. Many thanks. Wang Chong smiled and led the people behind him into the depths of Wushang village. Qin Qiqing had been defeated, Huang Batian had also been defeated by him, and the array had been broken. Psychic energy attacks were useless. Although the appearance of the chief of Wushang village was very unexpected, it was all within Wang Chong's expectations. I can finally see the chief of Wushang village. I'm really looking forward to it. Wang Chong smiled as he brushed past Huang Batian, Elder Fang, and Elder Du. The chief of Wushang village commanded 50 to 60,000 clansmen of Wushang. In Wushang village, he was the most powerful existence. In all the legends of Wushang village, the chief of Wushang village was related. When Wang Chong had first arrived at Wushang village, the person he had wanted to see the most was this chief of Wushang. Unfortunately, in the Great Calamity, all the elites of Wushang village had been lost, including this mysterious chief of Wushang village. He had also died in battle against the otherworldly invaders. It was said that mountains of otherworldly invader corpses had been found around his body. Of all the foreign invaders who died in battle, about half of them had died around him. When Wang Chong had first heard of this, he had been rather respectful. Unfortunately, he had never had the chance to meet him. The appearance of Wushang village like a comet had shocked the entire world, but it had disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Following the Great Calamity, the chief, elders, protectors, and all the core members of Wushang village had died in battle. Many secrets regarding Wushang village had also been buried underground. Even though some of the villagers of Wushang village had survived and had even become subordinates of Wang Chong, the famous Wushang Iron Cavalry, many core secrets that only the elders knew had also been lost. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The surroundings were filled with shadows and people. As Wang Chong and his 10-some subordinates walked into Wushang village, many of the villagers of Wushang village slid down from the cliffs and followed them, their gazes filled with vigilance as they looked at Wang Chong and the others. Wang Chong was calm and at ease, as if he hadn't noticed them at all. He had injured Qin Qiqing and the others and then defeated Huang Batian. It would be strange if the villagers of Wushang village had any good impressions of him. All of you, disperse. An elderly but dignified voice came from within the village. As soon as this voice rang out, the surroundings fell silent. All the villagers of Wushang village hesitated. Although they were still somewhat unwilling, the vast majority of them quickly scattered to the sides, climbing up the lofty mountains and vanishing without a trace. Only a small portion of them remained where they had been, but the atmosphere was completely different from before. Wang Chong walked along a 6-meter-wide stone path that had clearly been excavated into the village, carefully observing his surroundings as he walked. Although from the outside, Wushang village appeared to be filled with lofty mountains and precipitous ridges, once he entered the village and passed through the edge of the village guarded by Huang Batian, everything became completely different. The villagers of Wushang village began to build a smooth path that led into the village. From the outermost perimeter, after several hundred meters, flat stone bricks began to appear. At the end of the path, tens of thousands of stone bricks spread out to form a massive plaza. Here, Wang Chong finally saw simple and unadorned stone houses built from rough mountain rocks. In front of these houses and the plaza, there were many people standing. Unlike the outskirts of Wushang village, as soon as he stepped into this plaza, Wang Chong immediately sensed a solemn aura, as if he had stepped into a military camp. In the plaza, all eyes were on him. Chapter 702. Marquis. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from the plaza, quickly attracting Wang Chong's attention. The people of Wushang village would never call him Marquis. Those who would call him Marquis and know his identity were Marquis, its General Li and the others. A cry of surprise came from behind. Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and a dozen soldiers all looked in the same direction in the plaza. Following the direction of the voice, Wang Chong saw a familiar figure on the other side of the plaza. He looked past the villagers of Wushang village. His 2-meter-tall body was like an iron tower as he stood on the plaza, emitting a powerful aura. The giant longsword in the man's hand was as tall as a person, and it looked incomparably terrifying. Even in the territory of Wushang village, this person stood out like a crane among chickens and was extremely eye-catching. No one could block his radiance. Although all the people of Wushang village had surrounded him, they were separated by a few meters, clearly showing their fear of this giant general. Invincible Great General, Li Sai. After losing contact with him for many days, Wang Chong finally saw his most beloved general deep in the heart of Wushang village. His breathing was very messy, and there were many wounds on his body, but his body was still so straight and tall, like a majestic mountain range. It was as if as long as he didn't want to fall, nothing in this world could defeat him. General Li. Gao Feng and Nia Feng had expressions of unease and worry when they saw Li Sai. They hurriedly rushed toward the plaza. Wang Chong didn't stop them, nor did he hurry to follow them. Instead, he frowned slightly. Li Sai's ability was unquestionable. The invincible great general was enough to prove his ability. Even when he was insignificant, this sort of person was not someone an ordinary person could compare to. Moreover, after his experience in the War of the Southwest, Li Sai had become even steadier, more dependable, and stronger. This was also why Wang Chong was willing to give him the mission of subduing the Wushang people. But Wang Chong had said that the goal of this mission was to subdue the people of Wushang, not to kill or suppress them. Thus, he was strictly forbidden from using weapons. But now, Li Sai had not only used the unstoppable Wuzi steel weapon that Wang Chong had forged for him, his body was also covered in wounds and his aura was in disarray. Wang Chong truly found it hard to imagine just what sort of opponent could force Li Sai, who was using all his strength with his Wuzi steel weapon, into such a state. It had to be known that the last time Li Sai had used his full strength, he had single-handedly exterminated the Black Dragon Bandit, which had occupied the Silk Road and had established its base in Qixi. Even its boss, Black Dragon Zhao, had been killed. But now, Li Sai was being suppressed. Whoosh! With a wave of his robe, Wang Chong immediately strode toward the plaza. There was no one around to stop him. Wang Chong was the person the clan leader wanted to see, so no one would try to cause trouble at a time like this. Marquis. Surrounded by Wushang people, Li Sai held his sword with both hands. His resolute face was slightly haggard, and his mountainous physique slightly trembled as he breathed. It was clear that he had consumed a great deal of energy. Wang Chong solemnly nodded, his gaze quickly falling on the ground around Li Sai. Li Sai had led a group of 20-some people, but now only 7 or 8 were lying around him, heavily injured. The rest had all disappeared. Gao Feng and Nia Yan had rushed over and were already using the medicine of the army to treat them, but it was clear that their injuries were not light. Marquis. Upon seeing Wang Chong, one soldier after another opened their eyes and called out in low voices, expressions of extreme pain on their faces. Wang Chong nodded and waved his hand, indicating that they should rest. Marquis, I'm sorry. I did my best. But the mission still failed. For now, I can only protect them. Li Sai's face was covered in shame, and for the first time, he lowered his proud head. This mission had been far more difficult than he had imagined. Li Sai had never expected that there would be so many rare experts hidden in such a small, inconspicuous village in the northwest. This trifling expedition mission was even more difficult than the War of the Southwest against the more than 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army. I know. I don't blame you. Leave the rest to me. Wang Chong waved his hand. That calamity in his memories had not yet occurred, and Wushang village had not yet been attacked by the otherworldly invaders. This was still that conservative and xenophobic village, but it was still a legend. Wang Chong had to admit that his thinking had been too simple. The Wushang cavalry, hailed as the future #1 force in the world, were not so easy to subdue. I still have to do it myself. Wang Chong mentally sighed and turned his head to face Li Sai. In his last life, he had been the one who had personally subdued the Wushang cavalry. In this life, he would probably have to do it himself. It seemed like even a future invincible great general like Li Sai would not be able to replace him. You are the young marquis that this warrior speaks of. Before Wang Chong could speak, an elderly and deep voice rang out in his ear. Wang Chong opened his eyes and saw that across from Li Sai were a group of stern-faced, plain-robed elders. These elders were all 40 or 50 years old, and some of them had gray hair at their temples. They were at least 70 or 80 years old. But even so, these elders showed no signs of age. Wang Chong sensed a frightening aura from them, one that no ordinary elder could possess. Huang Boshan's ability to control rocks and transform into a 30-meter-tall stone general was already quite formidable in Wang Chong's view. But compared to these elders, he was clearly not just one level lower. Some of these elders exuded an aura that even made Wang Chong feel pressured. What a powerful cultivation! The Imperial Martial Realm, they're all at the Imperial Martial Realm at the very least. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Above the true martial realm was the profound martial realm, and above the profound martial realm was the Imperial Martial Realm. Wang Chong himself was an Imperial martial expert. But these elders standing across from Li Sai were all experts at the Imperial Martial Realm or above. Some of these elders exuded an aura that even shocked Wang Chong. This was no longer the strength of the Imperial Martial Realm, but the Saint Martial Realm at the very least. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, not even Wang Chong would have dared to believe that an obscure valley in the northwest of the Tang dynasty was actually hiding such a strength. 2 Saint Martial Realm, 7 Imperial Martial Realm, this is the strength of Wushang village before the calamity. It truly is powerful. And I'm afraid that this is only the tip of the iceberg for Wushang village. Wang Chong's eyes were bright as these thoughts flashed through his mind. At this moment, even he couldn't help but sigh. Wang Chong had never had the chance to witness the strength of Wushang village before the calamity. As the commander of the world's #1 Wushang cavalry, this was truly a pity. But the more this was so, the more Wang Chong had a thought in his mind. No matter what, he had to protect Wushang village and prevent the tragedy of the otherworldly invaders from repeating itself. This powerful strength should be used in a better place. They should have a larger stage, not die here alone and helpless. Buzz! Just as this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, a familiar voice resounded in his mind. Every marshal needs soldiers, just like how soldiers need leaders. This is the marshal's summon. Within 3 days, completely recruit the unruly Wushang people and recruit the first batch of Wushang cavalry. Host will receive a reward of 600 points of destiny energy. Upon hearing the familiar voice of the Stone of Destiny in his mind, Wang Chong's expression instantly changed. Wang Chong hadn't expected to hear the Stone of Destiny's voice at a time like this. Moreover, from the information revealed by the Stone of Destiny, his mission to recruit the Wushang people had suddenly become a one-off mission, and it was only for 3 days. It must have been because we sent Li Sai and clashed with them, causing the Wushang chief and elders to feel hostility toward us. That's why this happened. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. The Stone of Destiny would never issue a mission for no reason. Moreover, after experiencing the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong had gradually come to realize that rather than saying that the Stone of Destiny was issuing missions, it was more like the Stone of Destiny was using this method to give him a kind reminder. There was no question that the Wushang people's recruitment mission had encountered a problem. This is troublesome. Wang Chong's heart sank, but he did not reveal any of it on his face. However, the more difficult the mission, the more determined Wang Chong became. No matter what, he had to subdue the Wushang people. Correct, this one is. Wang Chong raised his head, his expression calm and devoid of fear. Buzz. The mood on the plaza instantly changed at Wang Chong's words. The Wushang village elders glanced at each other, frowning as they realized that this was a thorny problem. Wushang village was remote and surrounded by mountains. Not even bandits and brigands were willing to enter this place, let alone other people. But no matter how ignorant and inexperienced the people of Wushang were, even they knew that the land belonged to the king. As long as they lived in the Central Plains, they would be bound by the imperial authority of the secular world. To put it simply, the people of Wushang had to obey the orders of the imperial court. They had already noticed the words young marquis when they had obtained the token, but they had never imagined that this noble and lofty marquis of the secular world would personally appear before them. No matter how fierce the Wushang people were, they knew that this youth of 16 or 17 could not be touched. Chapter 703. Marquis, to think that you would grace us with your presence. Forgive us for not coming out to greet you. This one is Wu Jiumei, an elder of Wushang village. There must have been a small misunderstanding in this matter. Our villagers and Marquis's subordinates had a small conflict. We tried to dissuade them time and time again, but Marquis's subordinates refused to listen and insisted on barging into the village. We had no choice but to take action. But even so, we've already shown mercy. Marquis's subordinates are temporarily imprisoned in the village, and we haven't done anything to them. In a moment, I will have them hand over Marquis's subordinates. The speaker was an elder in his 70s or 80s. His temples were grizzled and his hair was silver, but his spirit was hale and hearty. His expression was solemn, and his words exuded a dignified aura. It was clear that he had an extraordinary status in the village. Before Wang Chong could speak, Li Sai behind him gave a long sigh of relief. This was the first time he had heard of the whereabouts of his missing subordinates. Marquis, these people are very powerful. If I hadn't taken out my Wuzi steel sword, I would have been captured by them. Marquis, you must not be careless. Li Sai suddenly took a few steps forward and whispered into Wang Chong's ear. I know. Have a good rest first. Wang Chong didn't even turn his head as he spoke in a light and breezy voice. Old sir, this one bears no ill will. The imperial court is in trouble in the desolate border, and the smoke of war is rising in all directions. It is time to mobilize the army. As the saying goes, everyone has a responsibility for the rise and fall of the world. The people of Wushang are brave and skilled in battle, and this one just happens to be building a city in Wushang, so I sent my subordinates to Wushang to recruit brave soldiers. If we can defend the desolate border and protect the people of the Central Plains, we will contribute to the country and the people. I believe that this will be a glorious matter for the people of Wushang. Wang Chong went straight to the point and stated his intentions. If he wanted to subdue Wushang's people, using trickery or schemes would only backfire on him. He might as well state his intentions directly. In fact, now that things had developed to this point, Wushang's people probably already knew why he was here. If he were to be secretive at this time, he would be looked down upon. Sure enough, upon hearing Wang Chang's words, Wu Jiumei and the other elders of Wushang village appeared to be completely unsurprised, clearly having anticipated his intentions. It is our Wushang village's honor to receive Marquis's favor. It's just that our Wushang village has always been isolated from the rest of the world and is used to peace. I'm afraid it's not suitable for war. Wu Jiumei immediately rejected Wang Chang's request. Moreover, our Wushang village is just a bunch of mountain villagers with limited abilities. How can we help Marquis conquer the world? I'm afraid that we will not be able to live up to Marquis's expectations. Marquis should look for someone else. The world is vast, and there are bound to be people more suited to Marquis's vision than our Wushang village. That's right, Marquis should look for someone else. The other elders also chimed in. Wushang village had lived in seclusion in the mountains for nearly 1,000 years, living a peaceful and aloof life. This had already become a tradition that no one could break, so how could it be easily changed just because of a few words from Wang Chong? Elder is too modest. If even the Wushang village's abilities are limited, then I'm afraid that no one else in the world is capable. My subordinates are all seasoned warriors, elites who can fight against 100 on the battlefield, but when they arrived at Wushang village, they were immediately captured by the warriors of the village. The Wushang village is definitely the most valiant warriors in the world. If we can obtain the help of the Wushang village, the Tang dynasty will definitely be able to pacify the borders and bring peace to the people. We will also be able to protect more people from the chaos of war. Moreover, the imperial court has always treated warriors who can fight for the country generously. I can also promise you that as long as Wushang village responds to my recruitment, I will bestow upon Wushang village a large amount of gold, silver, and resources. Wang Chong sincerely said. With the Wang clan's current influence and power, as long as Wang Chong was willing, he could bestow upon Wushang village unimaginable wealth, status, and reputation. On the other side, Wu Jiumei and the other village elders all had wonderful expressions on their faces. If Wang Chong's words had been a little more forceful, they would have immediately refused, but Wang Chong's words were extremely tactful, and his words were filled with praise and reverence for the Wushang village. This left everyone speechless. And most frightening of all was that Wang Chong's subordinates had truly been wounded by the villagers. Wu Jiumei had never imagined that these soldiers lying on the ground were elites who could fight against 100 soldiers. This, Wu Jiumei and the other elders glanced at each other, their expressions hesitant, momentarily at a loss for words. The young Marquis's eloquence is worthy of this old man's admiration, but I advise Marquis to stop wasting his breath and scheming. Just when all the elders were stumped by Wang Chong, a voice came from a stone house deep within Wushang village. This is. Wang Chong's eyes widened, as if this familiar voice had evoked something in his mind. It was this voice that had let him in during his battle with Huang Batian outside the village. But now that he was in the village, Wang Chong could no longer hear this voice. Chief. As Wang Chong was thinking, he suddenly heard Wu Jiumei's respectful voice. The Wushang village elders turned their heads and bowed in the same direction, expressions of subservience and respect on their faces. Wang Chong turned his head in that direction and saw a hunchbacked white-haired elder dressed in linen, leaning on a wisteria cane as he slowly walked out of a stone house several dozen zhang away. Wang Chong hadn't paid much attention at first, but after a single glance, Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes. The white-haired elder's footsteps were extremely slow, but each step seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 jun, giving off an intense impression. His footsteps did not seem to be on the ground, but on space itself, treading into the hearts of everyone present. He gave off an unfathomable and unrivaled aura. And at such a close distance, even if Wang Chong focused his eyes, he still wouldn't be able to make out the elder's face. The white-haired elder seemed neither too close nor too far, not too blurry, but also impossible to see too clearly. And what made Wang Chong most apprehensive was that he couldn't sense this elder's aura. It was like this elder was just a shadow that didn't exist at all. This made Wang Chong's heart shiver. If he were just an ordinary person, it would be fine, but Wang Chong had long since broken into the imperial martial realm and cultivated the great yin-yang heaven creation art. There was almost no martial artist on the same level as him who was a match for him. Even an expert like Huang Batian, who had cultivated the stone general to a superb level, had been powerless against Wang Chong, completely toyed within the palm of his hand. But now, in front of this ordinary white-haired elder, Wang Chong couldn't even sense his aura. This was simply inconceivable. Saint Martial Realm. Wang Chong's pupils constricted as a thought flashed through his mind. He wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling. Wang Chong had felt it before, from Zhangqiu Jianxiong, Huishu Wuzong, Duan Gechuan, and the other great generals. And as the former Grand Marshal of the world, a supreme Saint Martial expert, Wang Chong couldn't be more familiar with the aura of someone on the same level as him. How could this be? At this moment, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. He had never imagined that this tiny Wushang village would be hiding an expert of the great general level. Any country or faction that possessed an expert of the great general level would assuredly have a massive rise in influence and status, instantly becoming an influential figure among the other countries. For such an expert to be hidden in Wushang village was a massive blow to Wang Chong. Wang Chong suddenly understood why the otherworldly invaders had been so heavily wounded when they had charged into Wushang village. An expert of the great general level leading several Saint Martial experts, many imperial martial experts, and 50 to 60,000 true martial and profound martial realm villagers. Wushang village had the strength of a regular army, and it was on the level of a small protectorate. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen the true resources of Wushang village. However, Wang Chong still sensed a hint of disharmony. Although the white-haired elder had done his best to hide it, Wang Chong had still sensed an abnormal ripple of chaos from his body. It seems that not even he was able to escape that fate. Wang Chong thought of something and immediately understood. Elder, my apologies for my lack of manners. Wang Chong clasped his hands and respectfully bowed to the Wushang village chief. Elders were respected, and this person was as old as Wang Chong's grandfather. The white-haired elder's eyes flashed at Wang Chong's respectful attitude, but his stern face did not soften in the slightest. For young master to be made a marquis at such a young age is truly a dragon among men, leaving a deep impression on others. However, a country has its laws and a clan has its rules, and Wushang village also has its own rules. All the villagers of Wushang village are not to lightly leave the village and involve themselves in the struggles of the outside world. This is a rule set down by our ancestors. Marquis, there's no need to waste your efforts. Please return. The white-haired elder sternly said as he walked toward the group. His steps seemed slow, but they were actually fast. When he first spoke, he was still several dozen zhang away, but by the time he finished speaking, he was only 10 zhang from Wang Chong's group. Elder, Marquis, please return. The white-haired elder's expression was inflexible and inflexible. With these words, he loosened his hand and gestured toward the exit of the village, clearly intending to send the guest away, not giving Wang Chong a chance to speak. Buzz. Chapter 704. In the end, Wang Chong was a marquis of the imperial court and a disciple of the Son of Heaven bestowed upon him by the Holy Emperor. Wushang resided in Wang Chong's territory and was under Wang Chong's jurisdiction, so it was reasonable for Wang Chong to respond to the recruitment. But no one had expected Wushang village to be so unreasonable. Without any room for negotiation, they had directly rejected the proposal. And when they thought about how their soldiers had been injured, their complexions turned even more unsightly. It had to be known that someone of Wang Chong's status was completely capable of mobilizing an army to besiege Wushang village. Impudent. Gao Feng was the first to stand up and defend Wang Chong. With Wang Chong's current status, Even the patriarchs of those powerful clans that had been operating in the capital for more than 100 years had to treat him with the utmost courtesy. These people from Wushang village were going too far. Gao Feng, Wang Chong extended a palm and stopped Gao Feng. He had come to recruit the people of Wushang village, not to start a feud. And there was one thing that the Wushang village chief was probably not lying about. Wushang village truly did have its own traditions that forbade anyone from leaving the village to involve the outside world. Otherwise, Wushang village wouldn't have remained hidden for nearly 1,000 years, waiting until now. Wang Chong had heard of this rule from Fang Xiaoyan, so he was well aware of it. However, rules were dead while people were alive. If the rules were truly unchangeable, he would never be able to recruit 5,000 Wushang soldiers and become the highest commander of the famous Wushang cavalry. No matter what the Wushang village chief said, Wang Chong still believed that he had a way to change their traditions and accept the recruitment. Grandfather, why are you here? In the blink of an eye, just when the atmosphere was at its deadliest, a familiar, childish voice suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Wang Chong turned his head around and saw a petite girl at the edge of the square. Her footsteps were light and agile like a raccoon. She was carrying a large metal box that was even taller than her and was skipping toward the square. Big brother, you're here too. The little girl bounced around and finally noticed Wang Chong, who was opposite the white-haired old man. Her face was filled with surprise. Buzz! With the appearance of the little girl, with just a few words, the originally stiff atmosphere immediately relaxed and became much more relaxed. This child, the white-haired old man laughed wanly. His originally stern, inflexible, and aloof expression instantly melted like ice, and he could no longer maintain it. Xiao Yan. As the white-haired old man spoke, he waved his hand towards the distance. Looking at the time, it should be about time. Wang Chong glanced at the little girl who appeared at the edge of the square and smiled, as if he had already expected this scene. Grandfather, I forgot to tell you. This is a friend I met outside. They gave me a big box of Wujian grass. Then I can stay in the village for a few days and play with my luo-luo. The little girl bounced around like a raccoon and slipped to the white-haired old man's feet in a flash. She hugged his thigh and rubbed it against his leg like a kitten, making the white-haired old man not know whether to laugh or cry. By the way, big brother, this box of yours is not bad. I gave the Wujian grass to the elder and kept this box. It's perfect for my luo-luo to make a nest. The little girl turned her head to look at Wang Chong said. Hee, as long as you like it. Wang Chong smiled. Xiao Yan, you've been busy all day. Are you tired? Grandaunt prepared some snacks. They're on the table. Take them. Little fellow, don't always care about the fox. Remember to practice your martial arts. The group of chief of Wushang looked at the little girl and greeted her one after another. Their eyes were full of love and pampering. Their demeanor and tone were completely different from before when they were in front of Wang Chong and the others. Got it. The little girl pouted and waved her hand impatiently. Her eyes turned and soon fell on Wang Chong on the other side. By the way, big brother, have you found your friends? I found them. Wang Chong nodded with a smile and glanced at Li Sai and the others behind him. So it's them. The little girl frowned slightly, but soon became happy. It's good that you found them. Grandfather, they're all my friends. You can't bully them. Big brother, I won't chat with you anymore. I'm going to look for my luo-luo. The little girl carried her big iron box on her back. Without saying anything, she ran across the square like a wisp of smoke, heading to the other end of the square in high spirits. Looking at the little girl's back and the huge iron box, the white-haired old man and the group of elders smiled helplessly. However, after the little girl's antics, they couldn't keep a cold face anymore. Marquis, Xiao Yan has never been very willing to get close to outsiders. Since she's willing to speak up for you, at least your character is not bad and you're not evil people. It's just that Wushang village has its own rules, which were set by the ancestors. Even if I'm the chief, I can't disobey them. I hope that Marquis can understand this. It's not that Wushang village is unwilling to help. So, Marquis, please go back. The white-haired old man said. This time, his tone was much gentler. However, the meaning he expressed was not the slightest bit different from the first time. Li Sai, Gao Feng, and Nia Yan looked at Wang Chong. Wushang village would definitely not respond to the recruitment. Everything now depended on how Wang Chong would deal with it. Ha, old mister, since that's the case, I can't force you. However, it's already late and Wushang village is surrounded by mountains. There are towering mountains and steep cliffs everywhere. One misstep and you'll fall into a bottomless abyss. Can you let me stay here for a while and leave tomorrow? Wang Chong looked up at the gradually darkening sky and said. This, the white-haired old man frowned slightly. He instinctively wanted to refuse, but when he thought of the little girl, he hesitated. All right, but you have to leave tomorrow morning. Ninth Elder, take them to the village to rest and settle down. When they leave at dawn tomorrow, release their subordinates as well. Yes, Chief. Wu Jiumei solemnly nodded and then turned to Wang Chong. Everyone, please follow me. But only for one night. After one night, you must all leave no matter what. Wang Chong nodded, but his feet did not move. Old mister, I know that you have already made up your mind and will not easily change it. I also know that no matter what I say, you will not easily believe me. However, I still have a word of advice. I hope that old mister will listen to it. Oh. The white-haired Wushang chief frowned, a look of confusion on his face. Even Wu Jiumei stopped. He didn't understand what this young marquis of the Tang dynasty was trying to do. This was especially true now that the chief had clearly refused him. Don't eat rock salt. After saying this, Wang Chong led Li Sai, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others into the distance. The white-haired and bearded chief of Wushang village was left behind. His body trembled slightly as he looked at Wang Chong's back with a thoughtful look in his eyes. The sky gradually darkened and stars filled the sky. In a few stone houses at the edge of Wushang village, Wang Chong, Li Sai, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and a group of guards from various aristocratic families gathered together. Marquis, what should we do? We have to leave at daybreak. Are we really going to give up just like that? In the stone house, Gao Feng suddenly broke the silence. Although the people of Wushang village are very unruly and difficult to subdue, they are not easy to deal with. But if we can really recruit them, it will indeed be a very powerful force. Nia Yan also said from the side, a thoughtful look on his face. Although the people of Wushang village were very xenophobic and completely indifferent to the summons of the imperial court, even a fierce general like Li Sai had almost died in Wushang village. Frankly speaking, this was also a testament to the strength of Wushang village. Such a hidden village that was not coveted by any faction was simply a paradise for recruiting elite soldiers. It would be a pity to let it go like this. After staying in Wushang village for a while, Nia Yan's mind was filled with scenes of the people of Wushang village wielding giant boulders weighing several thousand jin, or even several thousand jin. Such a spectacular scene, besides a place like Wushang village, would be difficult to see anywhere else. I'm sorry, Marquis. I messed up this mission. I failed Marquis's trust. Li Sai lowered his head, his face full of shame. This 2-meter-tall, 8-foot-tall man rarely yielded to others, but at this moment, he lowered his arrogant head in front of Wang Chong and a group of elite guards. The recruitment of soldiers is a very small matter. When Li Sai left the capital, he was also full of ambition, and promised Wang Chong that he would definitely complete the mission. A man's promise was worth 1,000 gold. But at this moment, he had undoubtedly messed up. Ever since he received Wang Chong's summon, left biting, and followed Wang Chong all the way to war. Whether it was to suppress the Black Dragon Gang, set foot on the Uzun Plateau, spread the plague, or set fire to the granary, cutting off the retreat of Meng Shizhao. No matter how difficult the mission, Li Sai did his best to complete it. But this time, in this unknown Wushang village, Li Sai stumbled for the first time. Not only did he not complete the mission, but even half of the soldiers under him were captured. Even though he took out the indestructible Wuzi steel weapon, in the end, he was still no match for the people of Wushang. Ha, Sai, don't blame yourself. I know, you have done your best. The group sat on the ground, and Wang Chong patted Li Sai's broad, tall, and imposing back, comforting him, his expression completely unconcerned. Chapter 705. Buzz. The moment Wang Chong spoke, everyone trembled and raised their heads to look at Wang Chong. Even Li Sai turned to Wang Chong, a look of disbelief on his face. Anyone from the capital knew that the Lord Zhangqiu Wang Chong spoke of was the newly promoted Minister of War, Zhangqiu Jianqiong. He also had another title, the Protector General of the Annan Protectorate, or perhaps the Tiger of the Empire, which was better known to others. This name not only represented Zhangqiu Jianqiong's illustrious reputation and prestige, but also his strength as a top-class imperial great general that countless people in the world could only look up to. All imperial great generals were supreme experts at the peak of the Saint Martial realm. Although Li Sai was confident, he also knew that there was still a significant gap between him and the Minister of War, the Tiger of the Empire. But Wang Chong had actually said that even if Zhangqiu Jianqiong were to personally come here, he would still be met with a crushing defeat. We should all have a feeling. That's right. That Wushang village chief is a Saint Martial expert on the same level as Zhangqiu Jianqiong. Given his strength and the many elders and villagers of Wushang, even if Zhangqiu Jianqiong personally came here, he would still be met with a crushing defeat, much less us. Wang Chong indifferently said as he sat on the ground, feeling the chill of the stone building beneath him. Bang! Wang Chong's nonchalant words were like a stone stirring 1,000 ripples, but they immediately set off a storm in the ears of the crowd. Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the rest of the guards widened their eyes in shock. Although Li Sai's reaction was not as obvious as the others, he was still as shocked as ever. A Saint Martial expert. How could this be? That white-bearded old man. He can't even walk. Everyone's mind was in a mess, but no one doubted Wang Chong's words. In this matter, Wang Chong's judgment would never be wrong. Frankly speaking, the people of Wushang were stubborn. Not only did they not respond to the imperial court's summons, they even took the initiative to attack the imperial court's soldiers. In the beginning, everyone was indeed very angry, and they even thought of leading an army to attack Wushang village. But at this time, when they heard that Wushang village actually had a Saint Martial realm expert guarding it, how could they dare to have the slightest bit of such thoughts? Marquis, where did these Wushang people come from? How can an ordinary village be so powerful? Gao Feng's eyelids twitched, and he couldn't help but ask this question. I also want to know the answer. Wang Chong looked at the starry sky outside the window, a glimmer of light flashing in his eyes. There were many secrets regarding Wushang village. It was one thing for the Wushang to be able to traverse the mountains as if they were flying. After all, this place truly was surrounded by precipitous cliffs, and it wasn't strange for them to develop skills after living here for so long. But outside the village, the formations and psychic energy attacks unleashed by those Wushang elders called Elder Du and Elder Fang were not something that could be explained away by mountains and precipitous valleys. And before Wang Chong stepped into Wushang village, he did not expect that the chief of Wushang village was actually a Saint Martial expert. There were many secrets that Wang Chong did not know in his previous life. There was no doubt that in his previous life, he would not have had the opportunity to explore these secrets. But now that everything had been redone, all the elders and core members of the chief of Wushang village were still alive, and even Fang Xiaoyan had not grown into the naughty and barbaric girl from his previous life. He could finally explore Wushang village. But before that, the most important thing was to change the opinion of the chief of Wushang village and recruit the first batch of soldiers from Wushang village. Leave this matter to me. You all go and have a good rest. Wang Chong said, then quickly turned around and fell into deep thought. Rome was not built in a single day, and the traditions of Wushang village could not be changed overnight, especially before the calamity had even occurred. But no matter how difficult it was, Wang Chong would find a way to change it. As the former commander of the Wushang people, at this time, he needed the help of the world-famous Wushang Iron Cavalry. If there are no accidents, that thing should happen very soon. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. He slowly raised his head and looked at the sky. High up in the sky, a crescent moon hung alone. This kind of night was all too common in Wushang village. But if one looked carefully, one would find that the crescent moon in the sky was changing little by little. The crescent moon was becoming thinner and fainter at a speed visible to the naked eye. And as the crescent moon changed, the stars in the sky and the whole of Wushang village also quickly became dim. Everything seemed to be covered by layers of black gauze. This was a lunar eclipse. Wang Chong clearly remembered that before the catastrophe, an incident had occurred in Wushang village. Many of the elders and villagers of Wushang village had suddenly died one night. On that night, at least 2,000 or 3,000 Wushang villagers had died. Even Fang Xiaoyan's grandfather, the white-haired elder that Wang Chong had seen during the day, had been heavily injured in that incident. Half his body had been paralyzed, and his strength had plummeted. The great-uncle Jiu that Fang Xiaoyan spoke of, Wu Jiumei, had also died in that incident. If it weren't for this, Wushang village wouldn't have suffered so many losses and suffered so many casualties. It would have been fine if Wang Chong had not seen him during the day, but now that he knew that this white-haired elder was a peak saint martial expert on the same level as imperial great generals like Zhangqiu Jianqiong, Geshu Han, and Fomen Linta, Wang Chong could not allow this incident to occur. Every peak saint martial expert was a precious treasure to the Tang dynasty. Nothing could be allowed to happen to them. If he allowed a peak saint martial expert like Wushang village chief to die before his eyes, it would be a deep regret for Wang Chong. There wasn't much information left behind about that incident. All Wang Chong knew was that it had happened during a lunar eclipse, when the world was at its most impure and cloudy. This was also why Wang Chong had gone to the Bureau of Rights and the Bureau of Agriculture to calculate this before leaving the capital. In the 10 years before and after the calamity, the Tang dynasty experienced a total of 3 lunar eclipses. One was 5 years ago, one was 3 months after the calamity, and the last one is now. If there are no accidents, this is the most likely time for that incident. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Ah! While Wang Chong was thinking, a scream came from outside the room, shattering the peace of Wushang village. Elder Du! Someone, hurry! The quiet Wushang village suddenly fell into chaos. Before he could finish speaking, another scream came from another part of Wushang village. Wang Chong paled, and like an arrow released from a bow, he bolted out of the room without a second thought. Li Sai, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and everyone else, come with me. Bring the things I asked you to prepare. Wang Chong's voice was still echoing through the room, but he had already disappeared. The night in Wushang village was extremely quiet. This place was isolated from the rest of the world and surrounded by mountains. Everyone maintained the habit of working at sunrise and resting at sunset. Thus, when Wang Chong and the others entered the stone houses to rest, they could hear nothing from outside. But right now, Wushang village was in complete turmoil. Wang Chong stood on the plaza of Wushang village. The pitch-black Wushang village was now beginning to be illuminated. At the start, Wang Chong had only heard 1 or 2 screams, but now, he could hear them everywhere. The wailing of women and the crying of children, as well as the voices of those people who had been woken up by the screams and rushed out of their houses to investigate and help, were all coming from every direction. It's really happening. The wind howled. Wang Chong raised his head to look at the sky. The moon had completely disappeared, and the land was covered in darkness. In that instant, Wang Chong's hair danced wildly, and his heart was in a mess. Even though he had long heard of the huge incident that had happened in Wushang village, he only knew how serious it was after experiencing it himself. It was no longer a problem of 1 or 2 people, nor was it a problem of 100 or 200 people. It was a matter of 2 or 3,000 people dying at the same time. As the former commander-in-chief of the Wushang tribe, it would have been fine if he hadn't experienced it personally. But now that he was in Wushang village, he couldn't just sit back and watch this happen. After all, although the Wushang tribe was a little arrogant, in this catastrophe, they were the most courageous, loyal, and respectable troops in the entire world. The 5,000 Wushang Iron Cavalry had fought to the last man, and none of them had retreated. Until the very last moment, they had fought to the death against the foreign invaders, defending this land and this divine continent. They were the best warriors, the most loyal troops. This was also the reason why Wang Chong had to subdue them no matter what. Although the Wushang tribe were unruly, xenophobic, difficult to tame, and had deep-rooted traditions, once they were subdued, they were the most reliable warriors. A wild horse is hard to tame. This was a principle that every cavalry soldier understood. Great Uncle Jiao. Suddenly, a heart-wrenching cry reached his ears. Wang Chang's expression changed, and he flew out without thinking, flying in the direction of the sound. The wind howled on both sides, and in the dark night, countless stone houses flew in 2 directions. In that instant, many thoughts flashed through Wang Chang's mind. In all of Wushang village, there was only one person who was called Great Uncle Jiao, and that was the Wu Jiumei he had seen during the day. In Wushang village, Wu Jiumei was the elder with the highest seniority, apart from the chief. Although he was old-fashioned, this Great Uncle Jiao doted on Fang Xiaoyan very much. Thus, apart from her grandfather, Fang Xiaoyan's great-uncle Jiao's death had been the saddest and most regretful. And for a very long time after that, she still couldn't get over it. On the day of great-uncle Jiao's death, Fang Xiaoyan would be especially depressed and sad, and her mood would be gloomy the entire day. Chapter 706. Wang Chang's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he approached the place where the scream was coming from. From afar, Wang Chong saw a stone house. It was brightly lit, and there were many people from Wushang village surrounding it. Their faces were filled with anxiety. Who is it? It's the outsiders. What do you want to do? Leave now. Stop. Stop. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. But when the villagers of Wushang saw Wang Chong from afar, they were already on their guard. Some of Wushang's men immediately stepped forward and shouted, hoping that Wang Chong would stop and keep his distance. It's too late. Wang Chong was secretly anxious. The people of Wushang village still maintained a high degree of vigilance and rejection of him. This was also the reason why Wang Chong did not mention this tragedy during the day. Because no one would believe it. On the contrary, if things went wrong, the people of Wushang might even think that he was cursing them and might even chase him out on the spot. However, this matter was different. Perhaps even Wushang himself did not know how many people they would lose tonight. Wushang was too strong. Even people like Gao Feng and Nia Yan, who had fought with him on the battlefield, were shocked by their strength. However, Wang Chong knew very well that Wushang's strength came with a price. On the surface, they were also suffering from flaws and pain that ordinary people didn't know about. This kind of flaw would be fine under normal circumstances, but it would manifest itself during the night of a lunar eclipse. This was also the Achilles heel of the Wushang people. Out of the way. Wang Chong's eyes flashed with a cold light. Before he could say anything, he flicked his wrist, and a massive wave of stellar energy erupted from Wang Chong's body, forming a vortex dozens of meters wide. Boom! Before the villagers of Wushang could even get close, when they were still several feet away, they were all sent flying by an invisible force. Impudent! A stern shout came from the door of the stone house. In the depths of the darkness, the old chief of Wushang, whom Wang Chong had met during the day, suddenly dashed out with an ashen face. Along with him, there were also 5 small swords floating in the air. Buzz! The 5 small swords were only the size of a thumb. They floated in the air, looking as light as a feather. However, the feeling they gave off was exactly the opposite. Each of the swords was extremely powerful, and the aura they emitted was as heavy as a mountain. It made people feel as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. Metal ability. Wang Chang's expression also changed slightly. Wushang village was surrounded by mountains, and it was very easy to cultivate earth-type abilities, especially rock-type abilities. Huang Boshan's stone general was one such example. But this old chief of Wushang was actually able to use metal-type abilities, and he seemed even stronger than Huang Boshan's stone general. In a place like Wushang village that was covered in rocks, it was truly inconceivable. It's the 5 elements sword mountain. Wang Chong suddenly thought of something. It was true that the majority of the people of Wushang village had martial arts and abilities related to rock-type and earth-type abilities, but nothing was absolute. Wang Chong knew that there was an elder of Wushang village who cultivated metal-type abilities. His martial art was called the 5 Elements Sword Mountain, and it was extremely powerful. He was the only metal-type martial artist in Wushang village. The 5 Elements Sword Mountain was powerful, and its greatest characteristic was its 5 small swords. Each of these 5 small swords weighed over 1,000 caddies, their weight boundlessly heavy. Unlike other sword daos, it did not rely on the sharpness of the sword itself, but on the weight of the sword. Any opponent who dared to underestimate it would be torn to shreds. Alas, this metal-type elder had been short-lived. Like the others, he had died in the Great Calamity. Wang Chong hadn't expected that he would run into this elder. My apologies, I've offended you. Knowing the other party's identity, not only did Wang Chong not retreat, he even accelerated toward the metal element elder. Seeking death. In the shadows, the metal-type elder's eyes chilled. Elder Wu Jiumei was injured, so this was a critical moment. No matter how high Wang Chong's status was, he was still an outsider. If he dared to force his way in, he could not be blamed. Boom! There was a sharp sound in the void, and the 5 small swords suddenly trembled. The small swords that were only a few inches long were like giant whales in the sea. In an instant, they stirred up waves of air in the void, dragging out 5 huge vortexes. In that instant, the 5 small swords suddenly sped up, charging toward Wang Chong like 5 mountains. If Wang Chong were to be struck, he would probably be reduced to a bloody pulp in an instant. Wang Chong gave a slight snort at this sight, but he showed no fear. The 5 Affinities Sword Mountain was indeed powerful. A small sword was equivalent to a mountain. However, no matter how powerful the 5 Affinities Sword Mountain was, it could not compare to the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art, ranked first among the 10 great mystical arts of the Central Plains. Rumble. Wang Chong's robes flapped in the wind as he stepped forward. Instead of retreating, he shot forward like a cannonball. As he charged forward, Wang Chong pushed the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art to its limit. Bzzz. In the blink of an eye, an enormous attractive force exploded from Wang Chong's body. The air in a radius of 10 sumzhang began to twist and distort under the influence of this force field. Inside the stone house, the metal element elder only saw a flash before his eyes. In an instant, everything became distorted. Looking out from the house, everything became blurry. Not only that, even the 5 elemental small swords that he shot out were guided by an enormous and inconceivable force at this moment, causing them to change directions. Not good. The metal department elder paled. He knew that he had underestimated this young marquis of the Tang dynasty. Gathering his stellar energy, his dantian rumbled as he tried to change his attack and stop Wang Chong, but it was too late. Wang! A slender, white hand suddenly pressed against the dantian of the metal element elder's abdomen like a ghost. In a flash, the stellar energy in the metal element elder's body surged into Wang Chong's body like water breaking through a dam. But the domineering nature of the great yin-yang heaven creation art was not as simple as absorbing energy. The moment their bodies came into contact, the stellar energy in the metal element elder's body began to surge, and he instantly lost control of his stellar energy. And if a top-notch expert could not control the stellar energy in his body, it would mean that he would instantly fall from a top-notch expert to an ordinary person without the strength to truss a chicken. He would not be able to launch any effective counterattack. This was precisely the tyranny and terror of the great yin-yang heaven creation art. Once one got close, only death awaited them. Or they would be sucked dry. Senior, I'm sorry. Wang Chong took control of the metal department elder's stellar energy, and with a fling of his hands, he tossed the metal department elder out of the stone house and over his head. With a thump, the metal department elder landed on the ground, simultaneously sealing off his meridians and stellar energy. If the great yin-yang heaven creation art did not want to kill, this was the most direct move. The demonic emperor old man had used this method to subdue countless top-class experts of the older generation in the martial arts world, humiliating them in this manner. Wang Chong had long ago practiced this move to perfection under the orders of the evil emperor. After capturing the metal department elder of Wushang village with a single move, Wang Chong flung up his robes and charged through the doorway, bursting into the stone house. Inside the simple and crude stone house, a turpentine oil lamp was lit, illuminating a circle of dim light. In the innermost corner of the room was a stone bed. On the stone bed, the chief of Wushang that Wang Chong had seen during the day, old Wu Jiumei, was lying on the bed. His eyes were rolled back, and he was foaming at the mouth. His emaciated body was stiff, and his entire body was suffused with an abnormal black iron color. Beneath his skin, veins swelled and bulged, wriggling like earthworms. "What are you doing? Marquis, haven't we come to an agreement? Stay here until daybreak and leave. The matters of the village have nothing to do with you. Let's go. Let's go. If you don't leave, don't blame us for being impolite." When the Wushang village enforcers and elders saw Wang Chong, their strength no less than Huang Boshan's, they immediately became wary and solemn. Although Wang Chong and the others had been allowed to stay in the village, the wariness that the people of Wushang felt towards outsiders was not so easily dispelled. Especially at a time like this. "Marquis, please conduct yourself with dignity." With these last words, the massive Wushang enforcers immediately tensed up like taut bowstrings as they prepared to attack. If Wang Chong made the slightest movement or dared to take another step forward, they would join hands and attack without hesitation. "Whether we leave or not is a matter for tomorrow. But isn't Elder Wu the most important and urgent matter at hand? I don't think he can hold on for much longer." Wang Chong looked behind the enforcers as he spoke. The enforcers grimaced at Wang Chong's words and turned their heads. On the bed, Elder Wu Jiumei's stiff body was suddenly convulsing and trembling. Not only that, but blood was flowing from the corners of his eyes and his mouth. This was a sign that his internal organs had been injured. How could this be? The enforcers paled in fright. No matter how slow they were to react, they could still tell that Wu Jiumei was in a very bad state. Blood was flowing from his eyes, his head, and black blood was flowing from the corners of his mouth, his internal organs. These problems weren't a big deal for a young man, but Wu Jiumei was already very old. If they didn't think of something, they would be in deep trouble. Wujian grass. Quick, use Wujian grass. We've already given it to Elder Wu, but it's useless. Elder Wu has been ill for a long time, and he's taken too much Wujian grass. These things are no longer effective on him. Then what can we do? Hurry and think of something, think of something. Hurry and call the chief. Only the chief has a solution. I've already called him. But Bo Tian and the others still haven't returned. In an instant, the room was in chaos. At this time, no one cared about Wang Chong behind them. When, in the blink of an eye, just when the stone house was in chaos and everyone was at a loss for what to do, a black shadow suddenly rushed to the stone bed, stretched out the index and middle fingers of his right hand, pried open the mouth of the black shadow, and pushed a pill into it. Bastard! Stop! What are you doing? Chapter 707. Don't panic. Elder Wu and I don't know each other, so why would I harm him? Furthermore, given Elder Wu's current condition, why would I harm him? Wang Chong clasped his hands behind his back, a smile on his lips as he swiftly retreated. There's no need for you to interfere in the affairs of our Wushang village. Speak. Just what kind of medicine did you give the elder? Before the other elders could speak, one of the protectors of Wushang village couldn't help but bellow angrily. His hands were clenched into fists, trembling slightly. It was clear that he was on the verge of losing control. Although the village had warned them time and time again that the other party was a marquis of the imperial court and they couldn't act recklessly. But this time and time again, it was really too much. If anything happens to the elder, don't blame us for being impolite. Another protector said angrily. Don't worry, nothing will happen to him. Wang Chong said indifferently, his expression carefree. Even when facing the enraged chief of Wushang, he was still calm and composed. However, his slightly trembling fingers, which had his back facing the crowd, revealed the true fluctuations in his heart. Something was wrong. Wang Chong clearly remembered that Wu Jiumei had only been injured in this incident. But now, Wu Jiumei's breathing was weak, and blood was flowing from the corners of his eyes and mouth. Moreover, it was black blood. This was a very bad sign. No matter what, this was not as simple as a serious injury. In the worst-case scenario, he might die. I hope that pill will work as usual. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he felt a little worried. He could sense that the events in Wushang village seemed to be a little different from his previous life. Wu Jiumei had only been seriously injured at first, but if things went wrong, he might even die in this incident. Things had already changed, and there were many things that he couldn't be sure of anymore. Ah! Just as he was feeling a little uneasy, an old and drawn-out voice suddenly rang out in the stone house. Hearing this voice, everyone's body trembled violently. One by one, they looked toward the stone bed. On the stone bed, Elder Wu Jiumei's eyes had turned white and black blood flowed from the corners of his mouth and eyes, accompanied by white froth. Suddenly, the whites of his eyes slid down, revealing his slightly murky but pitch-black pupils. As he let out a long sigh, his original black iron-like skin faded away like a receding tide. First the face, then the neck and arms, then the entire torso and feet. A crimson color gradually emerged from Wu Jiumei's body. Not only that, Wu Jiumei's eyes swiveled, quickly noticing the Wushang village protectors and elders not far from the bed. Chongli. Yunwen. Wu Jiumei called out the names of several elders. Although his voice was faint, it was extremely clear. Elder. In the room, a few villagers who were serving at the side, serving water and towels were overjoyed. They were the first to pounce on the stone bed. That's great. The elder is awake. The elder had woken up. A few moments later, Wu Jiumei rubbed his head and slowly sat up on the bed before everyone's shocked gazes. Shock. Incomparable shock. As they looked at Wu Jiumei, who acted as if nothing had happened, they turned to Wang Chong at the door, the shock in their eyes indescribable. In particular, the protectors who were filled with hostility toward Wang Chong had complicated expressions on their faces. Impossible. There can't be any medicine that can be so powerful. The elder Wu Jiumei called Yunwen suddenly strode over and grabbed Wu Jiumei's arm, which was hanging by the side of the stone bed. Wu Jiumei's pulse was very stable and was gradually recovering, beating faster and faster, becoming more and more stable. Not only had it completely recovered, but it was also much calmer than Wu Jiumei's pulse had ever been. The elder Wu Jiumei, called Yunwen, abruptly turned his head to look at Wang Chong at the door, shock, astonishment, and an indescribable excitement in his eyes. Wang Chong only smiled and said nothing. "Brother Jiu, how do you feel? How do your shoulders, neck, right leg, back, and organs feel? Does it hurt?" Elder He Yunwen quickly turned around and tightly grasped Wu Jiumei's hand as he asked anxiously. "Very good, it doesn't hurt." "What's wrong?" Wu Jiumei slowly moved his body as he asked in confusion. At first, he didn't understand why He Yunwen was asking this, but when he subconsciously said these words, he immediately sensed something and froze, his face full of astonishment. In an instant, the room fell into a deathly silence. Countless pairs of eyes looked in the same direction, and they were all extremely excited. Impossible. Although the people of Wushang village are powerful, every one of us will feel a dull pain from the age of 3. At the end of every month, or when the stars dim and the yin energy in the world is at its densest, the pain will flare up and our bodies will twitch. Many people don't even live past 50 before they die. The village once invited an arcane master who said it was a problem with the feng shui of the village. Elder Wu is already 70 or 80 years old. His condition is more serious than anyone else in the village. How could he suddenly recover? Someone in the stone house muttered to himself, voicing the thoughts of everyone present. Those who arrived at Wushang village for the first time would only marvel at the great strength the Wushang people had trained in the mountains and precipitous ridges, but few knew the price of this strength. Every person in Wushang had to endure a kind of internal pain from the moment they were born. As they grew older, the pain would only grow more and more severe. Generation after generation, batch after batch, no one had ever been spared. The reason why Elder Wu's pain flared up so fiercely, even causing black blood to flow from the corner of his mouth, was related to his age and this kind of injury. In that instant just now, many people had thought he was going to die. But no one had imagined that he would actually recover in such a short time. Not only did he recover, even his messy pulse had calmed down. Elder Wu's injuries couldn't have healed for no reason at all. It could only be because of the pill Wang Chong had fed him. Shock, astonishment, disbelief, as well as deep excitement and desire. In that instant, all kinds of emotions flashed across the faces of everyone in the room. If Wang Chong's pill could be effective on someone of Elder Wu's age, then didn't that mean that the pill would be effective on everyone? At this moment, even the enmity in the hearts of Wushang village towards Wang Chong melted like ice. They looked towards Wang Chong as if he was their savior. "Marquis, if you don't mind, can you tell me what pill you fed Elder Wu?" He Yunwen asked, forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart. Wang Chong only smiled and didn't say much. He loosened his fingers and handed over the other pill. Wang Chong's painstaking efforts hadn't been in vain. He could clearly feel that the attitude of the Wushang villagers towards him had undergone an earth-shattering change, and all of this was because of the pill he had brought. Slap! Before He Yunwen could take the pill, a hand suddenly reached out and slapped the pill in Wang Chong's palm onto the ground. "Elder, are you crazy? He's an outsider, how could he be so kind? How could he know how to cure the hidden illness of our Wushang villagers? This is a problem that the Wushang villagers haven't been able to solve for hundreds of years. How could an outsider solve it? This must be a coincidence. It must be because Elder had swallowed a large amount of Wujian grass. The medicinal properties of the Wujian grass had accumulated over the years and erupted at this time, curing Elder Wu's illness." A burly man in his 30s from Wushang village with a bright red scar on his left cheek suddenly shouted. His eyes were filled with malice as he stared at Wang Chong. It seemed that his hostility towards Wang Chong was deeper than anyone else's. "It's him." Wang Chong didn't pay much attention at first, but when he saw the bright red scar on his left cheek, his heart stirred, and he suddenly remembered. Previously, when he was fighting with Qin Chicheng, there was a Wushang villager who was more ferocious and radical than anyone else. Even Qin Chicheng had a hard time controlling him. When Wang Chong had sent him flying, one of the rocks had slashed across his cheek, leaving a bloody scar. However, that person's gaze towards him had become even more ferocious, so Wang Chong had a deep impression of him and remembered it clearly. It seems that he's harboring a grudge because of that matter. Wang Chong understood. I've said what I needed to say and done what I needed to do. Since you don't believe me, then so be it. I just don't know if everyone will be like Elder Wu tonight, able to rely on the Wujian grass that has accumulated in their bodies over the years to recover without any treatment. As Wang Chong spoke, he turned and listened for a moment, then turned and left. Outside the stone house, screams rose and fell, growing more and more frequent. This night of the lunar eclipse was destined to be a sleepless night for Wushang village. Wait! Just as Wang Chong was about to leave, Elder Wu Jiumei heard the screams ringing in his ears and grimaced. He hurriedly extended a hand and called out to Wang Chong to stop. But at this moment, another unexpected thing happened. Thump! Not far from the stone bed, the middle-aged man from Wushang village, who had been loudly berating Wang Chong and had a bright red scar on his left cheek, suddenly fell to the ground without any warning. His teeth were tightly clenched, his face deathly pale, and he lay motionless on the ground. Wansher, what's wrong? This time, everyone was shocked, and they all rushed forward, squatting down and gathering around him. Not good, his hidden illness is acting up. His condition is very serious, his entire body is convulsing. Get a towel and separate his teeth, don't let him bite his tongue. Elder, his pulse is growing weaker and weaker, and his body temperature is rapidly dropping. If this continues, I'm afraid, things had happened too quickly, and everyone was in a state of panic. Wansher had fallen too quickly, too abruptly, and his illness was acting up too quickly. In just a few moments, his body had rapidly turned cold, and that black iron-blue color was rapidly spreading over his entire body. This was not a situation that was unfamiliar to everyone. This was the sign of a chronic illness of all the Wushang villagers, and it was the most serious condition. Every Wushang villager would show these signs before they died. Chapter 709. Get out of the way, let me do it. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind. Elder Wu. Everyone was astonished to see Wu Jiumei slowly standing up from the stone bed, a determined look on his face. Elder. Don't move. Your injuries haven't healed yet. You should lie down and have a good rest. Yeah, if anything goes wrong, we won't be able to bear it. A group of people went up to dissuade him. Bastard. You guys still have the mood to discuss this at a time like this? Wu Jiumei's expression was solemn. He pushed aside the crowd and walked down from the stone bed in a shaky but abnormally determined manner. He pushed aside the crowd and walked over. Wu Jiumei picked up the pill from the ground, pried open Wansher's teeth, and stuffed the pill in. Water. Soon, a villager from Wushang village handed him a glass of water. Wu Jiumei gulped down the water and the pill. After a while, accompanied by a cough, Wansher suddenly let out a long sigh, his face quickly becoming rosy. Elder. Wansher opened his eyes and looked at Wu Jiumei in confusion. Pa! A heavy slap landed on Wansher's face. Wansher was stunned by the slap. Everyone else was stunned as well. No one had expected that Wu Jiumei would slap Wansher in the face as soon as he woke up. Elder. Wansher's face was full of astonishment and he was completely dumbfounded. However, Wu Jiumei ignored him with a dark expression. Instead, he turned to Wang Chong. Marquis, I'm sorry. I apologize to Marquis on behalf of the villagers, and I hope Marquis won't take offense. Wu Jiumei respectfully bowed as he spoke. Although he was old and his hidden illness was acting up, making him dizzy, he wasn't so old that he couldn't hear clearly. Although he couldn't speak, he could clearly hear what had happened in the outside world. Moreover, as an elder of Wushang village and a top martial arts expert, how could he not know anything about the outside world? However, Wu Jiumei hadn't expected that the people who had barged in to save him would be a group of outsiders who had been completely rejected during the day. Haha, it's just a small matter. Elder, you don't have to be so polite. Wang Chong waved his hand, knowing that his efforts had finally paid off. The situation was urgent. Wang Chong wanted to help, but Wu Shang was too conservative and xenophobic. Even Wang Chong couldn't do anything about it. Fortunately, there were still some sensible people in Wushang village. Although there were some twists and turns, his plan still worked in the end. Marquis's Great Grace, Wu Jiumei thanks Marquis on behalf of the village. As Wu Jiumei spoke, he straightened his back and bowed respectfully with a solemn expression. Elder, you're too kind. Wang Chong faintly smiled. Although there had been some unpleasantness during the day, Elder Wu was still a reasonable person. Although he was a bit conservative, he wasn't pedantic. But Wu Jiumei has a presumptuous request. That kind of pill, how many more does Marquis have? Can you give us some? This is extremely important to Wushang village, so I ask that Marquis help us no matter what. Wu Jiumei did his utmost to maintain his composure, but his trembling eyes betrayed his emotions. The screams outside the stone house rose and fell, and it was different from the previous times. Wu Jiumei had never encountered such a serious situation in his life. Moreover, as someone who had just experienced the attack, Wu Jiumei was well aware that it wouldn't be as simple as pain and severe injuries. But despite his anxiety, Wu Jiumei couldn't help but restrain himself. During the day, he had been too harsh to these outsiders, too blunt in his rejection and even injured many of them. Even Wu Jiumei couldn't bring himself to ask for help at a time like this. In any case, just based on Wushang village's attitude toward them, these outsiders had no reason to help Wushang village. Even if Wang Chong refused, Wu Jiumei wouldn't find it strange. But Wang Chong's reply was beyond Wu Jiumei's expectations. Of course. A voice sounded in his ear. Wang Chong stood in the room, a bright smile on his face as he gave a straightforward reply. All of Wushang village immediately buzzed with activity. All the women and children, as long as they could still stand, joined the ranks of those who helped out. Wang Chong had originally estimated that 2,000 to 3,000 Wushang villagers would be injured or killed by the lunar eclipse tonight. But after experiencing it for himself, he feared that he had far underestimated the effects of this event. A butterfly flapping its wings tens of thousands of li away could trigger a hurricane on the other side of the ocean. And Wang Chong was that butterfly. The disaster that had befallen Wushang village this time seemed to be far more severe than he had imagined. Judging from the screams, the death toll could reach 7,000 to 8,000, perhaps even more. This kind of loss was something that Wushang village absolutely could not accept. When they emerged from the stone houses, everyone was pale and filled with fear. Gao Feng, Nia Yan, did you bring the things? Marquis, I brought them all. Li Sai, I'll leave this matter to you. Bring Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the pills. Follow Elder He Yunwen and dissolve the pills in water. Then feed them to the villagers. Yes, Marquis. Elder Wu, leave the affairs of the village to them for now. I'll have to trouble you to take me to the chief's place. We have more urgent matters to attend to. On the plaza of Wushang village, Wang Chong was issuing a string of orders. In this moment of panic and chaos, Wang Chong's experience on the battlefield, the calm and reason that allowed him to command an army, was put to use. On the plaza, the villagers of Wushang village subconsciously accepted Wang Chong's orders and began to organize themselves. On the other side, Wang Chong followed Elder Wu to the residence of the chief of Wushang elder. He had already obtained the trust of an important elder like Wu Jiumei, and Li Sai had gone to help with the solar eclipse in Wushang village, so it seemed like everything would settle down soon. But Wang Chong was most worried about the village chief of Wushang village, Fang Xiaoyan's grandfather. Wang Chong had never imagined that Fang Xiaoyan's grandfather was an imperial great general expert on the same level as Zhangqiu Jianqiong. Every single martial artist of this level was a strategic asset. For an expert of this level, even the slightest injury or drop in strength would have a significant effect, let alone a serious injury. This was because in a competition between experts, the slightest drop in strength would immediately cause an expert of the great general level to fall below that level, and they would no longer be considered an expert of that level. If everything had proceeded according to the original trajectory, Fang Xiaoyan's grandfather would have been heavily injured in the solar eclipse, his strength greatly reduced. To watch as an imperial great general of immense power was about to disappear and fall before Wang Chang's eyes was simply unacceptable. This was a complete waste of a heavenly treasure. Moreover, his fief's city of steel was about to be constructed. If he had an expert of the imperial great general level presiding over the city, it would be of great assistance to his management of his fief. Who goes there? Halt! All outsiders are forbidden to approach. Wang Chong followed Wu Jiumei to the residence of the Wushang village chief. Even from a distance, before he had even gotten close, Wang Chong could already sense an extremely solemn and tense atmosphere. Chief Wushang's residence was surrounded by group after group of experts, far more than Wu Jiumei's residence. At a distance of 50-some zhang, before Wang Chong could even get close, someone had already stepped forward to stop him. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb at this sight. At this time, Wang Chong couldn't help but rejoice that he had brought his generals with him. Stop! It's us! Wu Jiumei hurried forward without stopping. It's Granduncle Jiu. Get out of the way. Upon seeing that it was Elder Wu Jiumei, the crowd hurriedly scattered. Marquis, please follow me. With a solemn expression, Wu Jiumei leaped over the threshold and entered the room. Wang Chong followed closely behind him. But this time, with Wu Jiumei leading the way, no one stepped forward to stop Wang Chong. The stone house was bustling with activity, and a sorrowful atmosphere permeated the air. As soon as Wang Chong entered, he heard the sobbing of a little girl. The little girl, Fang Xiaoyan, was squatting on the ground, her eyes red and brimming with tears. She was looking in a certain direction and sobbing. Wang Chong's heart stirred as he followed her gaze. He saw a white-haired elder lying motionlessly on the bed. It was the Wushang village chief that Wang Chong had met during the day. At this time, his entire body was black, cold, and stiff. It was clear that he wouldn't be able to last much longer. Get out of the way, let me. Without another word, Wang Chong parted the crowd and immediately strode toward the Wushang village chief on the stone bed. Bastard! What do you think you're doing? Get out of the way. The elders are in the midst of treatment. Do you think this is your territory? Get out of the way. Everyone in the room had angry looks on their faces. What are you all standing there for? Get out of the way. I called him over to help. Suddenly, a harsh shout resounded in everyone's ears. There was no need for Wang Chong to speak. Just as the crowd was at its most enraged, Wu Jiumei immediately began to curse, his expression extremely stern. Many people were dumbfounded by this sudden outburst. No one had expected Great-Uncle Wu Jiumei to speak up for an outsider. Great-Uncle Wu Jiumei, what are you all standing there for? Didn't you hear? Get out of the way, let him pass. Wu Jiumei said with a dark expression. Everyone was dumbfounded and confused, but they still subconsciously stepped aside. In Wushang village, besides the chief, Great-Uncle Wu Jiumei had the highest status. Now that the chief was unconscious, no one dared to disobey Great-Uncle Wu Jiumei. With Wu Jiumei as his imperial sword, the resistance that Wang Chong faced was greatly reduced. Parting the crowd and squeezing to the stone bed, Wang Chong pushed open the Wushang village chief's teeth with his right hand and swiftly stuffed a dark brown pill into his mouth. Then, he brought over a cup of water and helped the village chief drink the pill. Like snow melting, the dark brown pill was swallowed. At first, the crowd was still angry but didn't dare to speak, only glaring hatefully at Wang Chong's back. But as the pill melted and seeped into the village chief's stomach, the crowd soon saw rings of dark luster rapidly melt from the Wushang village chief's lips like snow under the sun. Immediately afterward, the Wushang village chief's thin cheeks flushed red. Ah! The Wushang village chief's chest shook. With a long breath, the Wushang village chief opened his eyes. Chapter 710. The people who had just berated Wang Chong wore expressions of incredulity. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that Wang Chong possessed this kind of ability. One had to realize that they had already tried everything, including Wujian grass. Village chief. Village chief. Village chief. After being stunned at the very beginning, everyone quickly recovered from their shock, and all of them were pleasantly surprised. They swarmed over and surrounded the patriarch's stone bed with extremely excited expressions. Wushang village was conservative and xenophobic, but it also maintained its simple sentiments. The most revered person in Wushang village was the chief, and many of the villagers had grown up under his watch. To the villagers of Wushang village, he was their spiritual leader. When the patriarch fell, everyone was helpless. They were all out of their wits and panicked. Many of them had even thought that the chief was about to leave. Now that the chief had finally recovered and awakened, the excitement in everyone's hearts was palpable. While everyone crowded around the chief, only Wu Jiumei stood at the back and sighed. He looked at Wang Chong's back with a complicated expression, one that was both grateful and a little ashamed. Given how the villagers of Wushang village had treated him during the day, any other ordinary person would have already left him to his fate. But the other party had disregarded their former enmity and helped Wushang village. This made Wu Jiumei feel both grateful and ashamed. Marquis, thank you. Wu Jiumei stepped forward and thanked him sincerely. Before today, no one had expected that this year's lunar eclipse would occur, a rare occurrence that only occurred once in several years. This was when the aura of darkness and darkness was at its strongest. To the villagers of Wushang village, this was a time of life and death. If this young man hadn't appeared in time with the pills, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Wang Chong only smiled and said nothing. Grandpa. In the room, the little girl's face was also full of tears as she excitedly rushed over to the old man. Wang Chong stood at the back and silently watched this scene. A knowing smile appeared on his face. No matter what, he finally helped the future Fang Xiaoyan do something and made up for a regret in her heart. Everything was over. He was not needed anymore. Without alerting anyone, Wang Chong quickly left the room. Has everything been taken care of? It was pitch black outside the room. A huge figure stood in the darkness, towering like a mountain. I've already sent Gao Feng and Nia Yen to handle it. The 100 pills that we brought have all been dissolved into water and fed to the villagers of Wushang. Their condition has stabilized now. Li Sai's vigorous and powerful voice came from the darkness. It had a special quality to it that made people feel sincere and powerful. Yes. Wang Chong said no more. He listened carefully for a while. In the dark night, the originally chaotic Wushang village gradually calmed down. The rising and falling howls and cries of pain disappeared together. The village slowly regained its peace. Wang Chong nodded slightly. Obviously, the pills that he brought had taken effect. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so quiet. Tell the others to finish what they're doing and come back immediately. Stay at the place that the people of Wushang have arranged for us to stay. Yes, Marquis. Li Sai's voice came from the darkness. Turning around, Wang Chong quickly walked back to the stone house. But after taking 2 steps, a voice came from his mind. The Stone of Destiny's voice was calm and emotionless. But in Wang Chong's ears, it was like the sound of heaven. Success. Wang Chong stopped and clenched his fist. The heavens do not disappoint those who wait. The xenophobic, conservative, and strict adherence to tradition of the Wushang people made it impossible for them to submit to any faction before the Great Calamity. These people did not even care about his status as the young Marquis, the son of Heaven's disciple, or his official status in the imperial court. one could easily imagine their wills. However, the night of the lunar eclipse in Wushang village had provided him with an excellent opportunity. The night of the lunar eclipse was the most influential event in the history of Wushang village. If he had not appeared, the Wushang village would have suffered at least 2,000 or 3,000 casualties, perhaps even more. Before the great calamity, this was his only chance to win the favor of the xenophobic Wushang people. There was no doubt that his plan had worked. He had successfully reversed this tragedy and won the favor of Wushang village. The Stone of Destiny's voice was the best affirmation of his actions. But what surprised Wang Chong was that in the past, the Stone of Destiny would only give him a notification after the mission had been completed. This was the case for both the regional commander's incident and the Empire's elegy in the southwest. But this time was clearly different. The matter was still not over. He had just fed the Wushang people the pills and water when the Stone of Destiny had given him a notification. This was something that had never happened before. Is it because Wushang village is only a small village, not part of the main course of history, so it doesn't have much influence at the moment? Or is it because I first saved Wu Jiumei and the Wushang chief? Or did I take the high-level route? Wang Chong's eyes turned, his mind in turmoil. After some thought, he realized that it probably had to do with the fact that Wushang village was an obscure mountain village. Although I don't know how you calculated it, if that's what you think, you're gravely mistaken. As Wang Chong thought of this, his lips curved into an almost imperceptible smile. Wushang village was truly very small. 50 to 60,000 people was an insignificant number in the entire world. Moreover, they were so conservative, xenophobic, and rigidly adhering to tradition. In terms of influence, they truly did have very little influence at the moment, but as long as he was given a chance, his influence in the future would be immeasurable. 5,000 Wushang cavalry had already followed him to conquer the world, sweeping through all obstacles and making illustrious contributions. The great calamity had yet to occur, and the Wushang people had yet to suffer heavy losses. 50 to 60,000 Wushang people, this flood of strength was unimaginable. The reward will be distributed at daybreak, interesting. As he recalled the Stone of Destiny's final words, a hint of interest flashed through Wang Chong's eyes, but Wang Chong quickly regained his composure. Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others finished their work and returned to the stone house. The night was peaceful until daybreak. The moon had set, and the stars had sunk. A bright red sun rose from the horizon, radiating rays of light. Rays of red light dyed the mountains, and the surrounding mountains of Wushang village were covered in a red glow. Unknowingly, it was already daybreak, and it was finally time to leave. Marquis, what do we do? At the entrance, Li Sai sat cross-legged, his back straight like a tiger or a dragon. In his hand was a giant Wuzi steel sword that was as tall as a human. He seemed to have not slept for the entire night, and when he opened his eyes, they were bloodshot. He looked like he had a lot on his mind, as if he was suffering. Are we really going to leave empty-handed like this? Li Sai's face was full of struggle. The task that Wang Chong had given him had been rejected by the village chief of Wushang village, and it had been a complete failure. In Li Sai's life, this was something that had never happened before. Seeing that it was time to leave, Li Sai's heart was filled with unwillingness. Hee, let's go. Why not? Gao Feng and Nia Yan are awake, right? It's about time, we should prepare to leave. Unexpectedly, after waking up, Wang Chong's face was calm, and there was no sign of frustration from the failure of the recruitment task. Ah! At that moment, everyone was stunned. No one had expected that Wang Chong would make a decision so easily, and without the slightest burden. But since Wang Chong had spoken, no one dared to disobey. Everyone could only stand up, pack their things, and prepare to leave. In the morning, Wushang village was quiet and peaceful, and there was no sign of the hustle and bustle from last night. Wang Chong bowed slightly and walked out of the stone house. Outside, rays of light shone on the barren mountains, and also on the rows of stone houses and the wide stone plaza of Wushang village. Everything was bathed in the morning sun, and it was a picturesque scene. How beautiful! I hope that I will always be as peaceful as this. Wang Chong said to himself. It was precisely because he had seen the crumbling of the mountains and rivers that he felt the preciousness of the present. No matter what, Wang Chong hoped that this paradise-like village, and the central plains beneath his feet, could forever maintain this picturesque beauty. Marquis. A voice came from behind him, pulling Wang Chong back from his thoughts. In just a few moments, all the guards, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, Li Sai, his soldiers, and even the captives walked out of the stone house. Last night, after everything had been arranged, Wu Jiumei had released these captive generals. Let's go. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong waved his robe and strode like the wind, leading Li Sai, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others toward the mountains to the west. He had come from the west, where Zhang Shouji and the others had been waiting for him. Now that the matter was over, it was naturally time to return there. Wait a moment, Marquis, please wait a moment. In the blink of an eye, just as Wang Chong was about to lead his people away from Wushang village, a voice suddenly came from the other end of the plaza. Accompanying the voice was a series of footsteps that were getting closer and closer. Wang Chong turned his head and saw a group of Wushang villagers hurrying toward him from the other end of the plaza, illuminated by the morning sun. The man in the lead was the chief of Wushang village, and accompanying him were Wu Jiumei, Huang Batian, and the other elders and protectors of Wushang village, as well as the other backbone of the village. Chapter 711. This is. What are the people of Wushang trying to do? Everyone was shocked. This was no small matter, and it made them feel a little uneasy. Could it be that they wanted to stop them and prevent them from leaving? Only Wang Chong smiled without saying a word. As expected, they still came. Wang Chong's expression was indifferent, as if he had already predicted this scene. Greetings, Chief. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat. Without waiting for the chief of Wushang to come over, he led the crowd, turned around, and took the initiative to greet them. Marquis, I'm sorry, I've come late. Last night, Marquis let bygones be bygones and lent a helping hand. Jingguan and the villagers will remember your kindness, and will never forget it. The white-haired old man said with a straight face. Chief, you're too kind. It was nothing. Wang Chong waved his hand, and said nonchalantly. The medicine was originally prepared for them. Big brother, thank you for saving my grandpa. A soft voice came from the side. The little girl, Fang Xiaoyan, also raised her head, and said sincerely. Seeing the sincere look on this lass's face and thinking about her barbaric, willful, and unreasonable appearance in 25 years, Wang Chong almost laughed out loud. You're welcome, it's just a small matter. Wang Chong patted her head and said. With the little girl's intervention, the atmosphere between the two sides suddenly eased a lot. Lord Marquis, there are no words to express my gratitude for this great favor. Yesterday, we were rude. No matter what, I request that Lord Marquis stay in our Wushang village for a few more days so that we can express our gratitude as a host. The white-haired old man said. Many things can only be realized after a long time. Last night, despite Wang Chong's help, there were still 8 Wushang villagers who acted up prematurely, and before Wang Chong's antidote, they died on the night of the lunar eclipse. They died with the same symptoms as the others. Just thinking about the 4,000 to 5,000 clansmen who acted up on the night of the lunar eclipse, everyone felt a lingering fear in their hearts. If it weren't for Wang Chong, last night would have been unimaginable. It was not an exaggeration to say that Wang Chong was the great benefactor of Wushang village. No matter how he tried to repay this kindness, it was far from enough. Thinking of how the villagers treated Wang Chong and Li Sai during the day, even the head of Wushang village couldn't help but feel ashamed. We appreciate Patriarch's kind intentions, but there's no need to linger. We still have some matters to attend to, so we'll be leaving first. Unexpectedly, Wang Chong waved his hand and refused. This answer obviously exceeded the expectations of the village chief and the group of elders of Wushang village. Everyone's expression froze, and they were instantly speechless. This. Marquis, to tell you the truth, I actually have something to ask of you. The elixir that Marquis gave us last night is very important to us. I wonder if Marquis has any more. Also, Marquis mentioned rock salt yesterday. What does that mean? The village chief of Wushang village looked embarrassed. Although he was a little embarrassed, he still said it. To tell you the truth, I only have a total of 100 of those elixirs, and they've all been used last night. As for rock salt. Wang Chong smiled as he spoke. He looked at the group of elders of Wushang village opposite him, and there was a hidden meaning in his eyes. Wushang village is separated from the outside world, and there is no trade or communication. Although other things can be cultivated by ourselves, and food can also be replaced by kudzu vines, 3 meals a day can't be separated from salt. I wonder how Wushang village solved this problem. The village chief of Wushang village hesitated, unable to speak. This young marquis of the Tang dynasty was far more perceptive than he had imagined. The lofty mountains and precipitous ridges were filled with rocks, making them unsuitable for growing food. Thus, the people of Wushang village ate things like kudzu vines and Solomon's seal. This gave them innate strength and made them physically stronger than ordinary people. But there was one thing that they could not solve with ordinary methods, the salt that Wang Chong spoke of. Thus, the salt that the people of Wushang village ate was different from that of ordinary people. It was not sea salt, but rock salt. Simply put, it was salt from the cliffs of the land. The rock salt in that area had been discovered by the ancestors of the people of Wushang village. Generation after generation, the people of Wushang village had eaten the salt there. Is chief not willing to speak because he is afraid that the imperial court will find out and confiscate it? Wang Chong grinned, immediately seeing through the village chief's misgivings. Throughout the dynasties, salt and iron had always been controlled by the imperial court. Iron did not refer to ordinary iron, but to coins. No dynasty would allow the common people to casually mint coins. That would lead to monetary chaos. As for salt, just as Wang Chong had said, no one could live without it for 3 meals a day. The imperial court had only done this at the beginning to prevent people from profiting from this and causing the price of salt to soar. If the common people could not afford salt, they would riot. Such a thing had happened before. Of course, it was only later that they realized that there was a huge profit to be made from selling salt. Although Wang Chong did not know when the people of Wushang village had fled into this valley, even 1,000 some years ago in the Eastern Han dynasty, salt and iron had been nationalized and controlled by the imperial court. No matter how little the people of Wushang village interacted with the outside world, they should have understood this point. Obviously, they were also afraid that the rock salt mine they controlled would be discovered and controlled by the imperial court. Fortune lies within misfortune, and misfortune lies within fortune. I wonder if Patriarch has heard of this saying. Generation after generation of Wushang villagers, starting from the age of 3, began to suffer from unbearable pain. And the older they get, the more frequent the attacks and the more severe the pain. I wonder if the elder has ever thought about why all of this is happening. A cool breeze blew, and Wang Chong's robes fluttered in the morning sun. Looking at the Wushang village chief and the elders, Wang Chong had a meaningful smile on his face. Others might not know the secret of Wushang village, but as the commander of the Wushang Iron Cavalry, Wang Chong knew it clearly. The people of Wushang village would suffer from severe pain for their entire lives. Their skin would turn black and blue, their entire body would convulse, and the pain would be unbearable. And every time the yin energy was at its strongest, especially on the night of the lunar eclipse, it would act up. This had not changed even after Wang Chong had recruited them. Later on, Wang Chong had recruited all the most outstanding pharmacists and martial experts in the world, including famous doctors from Uzan, Mengshi Zhao, the Turks, Goguryeo, and other foreign countries. After 8 years of repeated experiments, he finally developed a pill to solve the pain that accompanied the people of Wushang village for their entire lives. It was the kind of pill that Wang Chong had fed them. This was also the true reason why Wang Chong was so confident that he would be able to subdue them when he came to Wushang village this time. However, the only problem was that this pill was very difficult to refine. In his haste, Wang Chong had only managed to refine around 100 of them, and they had all been used during the crisis on the night of the lunar eclipse. The chief of Wushang village felt his heart skip a beat, and a strange feeling surfaced in his heart once more. The youth before him was at most 16 or 17 years old, which meant that he was in the generation of his grandson. But for some reason, he couldn't see through this youth at all. For the first time, the chief of Wushang village felt an unfathomable aura from a youth. And what he couldn't understand the most was, how did he know about rock salt? This youth seemed to be shrouded in layers upon layers of fog, making it impossible to see through him. Marquis means. The chief of Wushang village frowned, and a pensive look appeared on his face. Chief, some salt can be eaten, and some can't. Not all the salt in the world can be eaten casually. At the very least, it can't be like Wushang village. Wang Chong said plainly. Rock salt was actually poisonous. It contained many ingredients, and most of them were poisonous substances that had to be specially processed and filtered. It wasn't just rock salt, there was also sea salt, all of which had to be specially processed. And if one consumed industrial salt, it could even lead to death. For Wang Chong, who had memories from another world, this was all common sense. But for the people of Wushang village, they clearly didn't know this. The people of Wushang village ate that poisonous rock salt from a young age, and the poisonous substances accumulated over time, constantly entering their bodies. So when they were 3 years old, the toxicity began to show. The most obvious sign was that a 3-year-old child would start to twitch and feel pain. Later on, the toxicity would continue to worsen, seeping into the flesh, hair, skin, bones, and even bone marrow. So, although there were many experts in Wushang village, there weren't many who could live past the age of 50. And there were even fewer who could live to 70 or 80 years old. In the entire Wushang village, with a population of 50 to 60,000, there were only about 20 to 30 elderly people. And if they were unlucky enough to encounter a lunar eclipse like last night, Wushang village would suffer heavy casualties. This was the Achilles heel of Wushang village, as well as the price behind Wushang village's great power. Marquis means that all of this is caused by our consumption of rock salt. Wushang village's village head said. Don't eat the rock salt in the village anymore. This is my advice to the village head and the elders, for the sake of Wushang village, as well as for the sake of all the villagers. Of course, whether you believe it or not is up to the village head and the elders to decide, Wang Chong said. His face was calm, and his expression was light and breezy. Sometimes, going too far was as bad as not going far enough. If it was too obvious, the other party would feel disgusted. So, although Wang Chong really wanted to help Wushang village and the villagers, this was the most he could do. Anything more would only be superfluous. As soon as Wang Chong's words fell, the village head and the elders of Wushang village looked at each other. There were many theories as to why the villagers would get that disease, including curses, heredity, environmental factors, and so on. But no one expected Wang Chong to say that all of this was related to the most inconspicuous and common rock salt that they consumed daily. This was like saying that the reason a person bled was because they took in an extra breath of air. Chapter 712. Thank you, Marquis. Even though he was still doubtful, the Wushang village chief still expressed his gratitude politely. Regardless of whether it was caused by the rock salt or not, there was still another matter that he was concerned about. Also, even though Marquis has already said that there's no such pill in the world, this old man would still like to ask if Marquis can tell us the formula for that pill so that we can concoct it ourselves. The greatest taboo for pill forging apothecaries was for others to ask about their pill formulas. Even the prestigious clans wouldn't easily reveal their precious pill formulas. The Wushang village chief was just probing Wang Chong with this question, so he didn't expect that Wang Chong would agree to it. But contrary to his expectations, Wang Chong agreed without any hesitation. Sure. Wang Chong chuckled, as if expecting the Wushang village chief to ask such a question. Without any hesitation, Wang Chong quickly reported the contents of the pill formula. It's not difficult to concoct this pill, but the ingredients are a little troublesome. It requires 30-year-old red sand fruit, 60-year-old Goguryeo ginseng, 100-year-old violet coral from the bottom of the ocean, 300-year-old Nanmu core, Arabian date palm, pomegranate from the western regions, and palm leaf powder from overseas. Wang Chong reported 70 to 80 different ingredients. The faces of the Wushang village chief, Wu Jiumei, and the other elders turned increasingly awful, and eventually, their faces turned ashen. The group had also thought of obtaining Wang Chong's prescription as soon as possible so that they could concoct it themselves. But none of them could have imagined that the pill formula would be so complicated and troublesome. There were many things that they hadn't even heard of before, let alone seen. Furthermore, Wushang village had been isolated from the outside world for many years, and the village didn't have much wealth. Even the simplest date palm and pomegranate were more than enough to drive them into despair, needless to say, concoct a pill themselves. Wang Chong's eyes were like torches. He could clearly see the reactions of the elders. It was not out of his expectations at all. In fact, he wasn't deliberately making things difficult for Wang Chong by giving him a fake medicine formula. On the contrary, everything Wang Chong said was the truth. Every single medicinal ingredient in it was a real medicinal pill. Wushang's hidden illness had been around for a long time, and it was very difficult to cure. Ordinary prescriptions were useless. Wang Chong had used his status as the world's Grand Marshal to gather a large number of experts and famous doctors, spending 8 years to develop it. Because it took a long time and there were many participants, the final prescription required a lot of medicinal ingredients. On top of that, the people involved weren't just the Tang people of the Central Plains. Uzan people, Mengshi Zhao people, Goguryans, Turkic shamans, Abbasid Caliphate, and even Karak Spazinu were also involved in the project. As a result, the ingredients in the prescription came from all over the world. But even though it was complicated, there was one thing that was certain: this pill was indeed useful to the people of Wushang. Furthermore, as long as one consumed it for 3 months, the root of the illness would be completely eradicated. Wang Chong had used the immense influence of his clan and the resources of the other clans in the capital to forge 100 dark brown pills in a short period of time. The Wang clan was a clan of ministers and generals. Given the Wang clan's strength, it was still difficult for them to forge the pill, let alone the isolated Wushang village. This old man would like to ask if this pill can cure the root of the illness. The Wushang village chief asked. Wang Chong nodded and gave an affirmative answer. In that instant, the Wushang village chief couldn't help but give a long sigh. After last night, he discovered that all the people who had swallowed the elixir had a much calmer pulse. Although the rules of the ancestors couldn't be disregarded, for the sake of all his clansmen, he could only make an exception. Marquis, this old man has a deal that I wonder if Marquis is willing to accept. Marquis said before that he wants to recruit soldiers from our Wushang village. If Marquis can help us gather those ingredients and forge that special pill, relieving the pain and illness that our Wushang village has been afflicted with for generations, this old man can make the decision and agree to Marquis' request to recruit soldiers from the village. However, the number of soldiers will be limited to the number that Marquis helped last night. It can't exceed 5,000. The Wushang village chief said. As soon as his voice fell, Li Sai, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the other soldiers' eyes lit up, their faces filled with surprise. The stubbornness of the Wushang villagers was something that everyone had experienced before. No one had expected that just when everyone was at their lowest point, thinking that they had failed the mission and were about to leave Wushang village, there would be such a turn of events. This was something that no one had expected. Deal. Wang Chong smiled and agreed without hesitation. Although it was only 5,000 people, to Wang Chong, this was a good start. As long as the Wushang villagers could break the tradition and come out, then they could recruit the second and third batch of 5,000 people. In the end, all the Wushang villagers would be under his command. In the future, the whole world would be shocked by these Wushang villagers. I've finally succeeded. My Wushang cavalry. At this moment, no one knew that the bitterness in Wang Chang's heart was over, and he deeply sighed. Before the great calamity, it had been very difficult to recruit Wushang villagers. Only those who had personally experienced it would understand. Getting the Wushang village chief to relent and release those 5,000 soldiers had been too difficult. At this moment, Wang Chong even felt a deep sense of accomplishment, even a deep illusion. Back then, he had only obtained the approval of Fang Xiaoyan, who had grown up, and a group of people who had participated in Wushang village. But now, it was more like everything was starting over. He, the future commander of the Wushang villagers, was going to obtain the approval of the Wushang village chief. The latter was the true spiritual and physical leader of the Wushang villagers. Congratulations, host. You have completed the Marshal's summon mission. You have been rewarded with 400 points of destiny energy. At almost the same time, Wang Chang's mind was shaken. The Stone of Destiny's voice suddenly rang out. The promised mission reward had finally been issued. Wang Chang's trip to Wushang village this time had been a great success. Oh! Behind Wang Chong, there was a wave of cheers. Everyone was incredibly excited. Although they had clashed a few times with the Wushang villagers, which had caused them some displeasure, even a man like Li Sai had to admit that the Wushang villagers were the best warriors. To Wang Chong, recruiting them would definitely be of great help. With this exchange of pills for conscription, and the night before, Wang Chong had helped the Wushang villagers avoid the deaths of 4,000 or 5,000 people. He was the true savior of the Wushang villagers. The entire Wushang village had a much more favorable impression of Wang Chong and the others. Coupled with the fact that they had previously injured Wang Chong's villagers, they felt ashamed. As a result, they were even more friendly to Wang Chong and the others. This was also something that Wang Chong and the others did not expect. Thinking about the Wushang villagers' reclusive, xenophobic, and conservative character, it was extremely difficult to win their favor before the great calamity. Although the Wushang villagers were quite conservative, and it was difficult for them to open their hearts and embrace outsiders. But once they opened their hearts, they would treat you as one of their own. They were quite warm and friendly. That night, Wushang village held a grand banquet to celebrate the victory. Come. Drink. Eat big chunks of meat, drink big bowls of wine. Come. Ha ha ha, delicious, really delicious. The Wushang village was filled with cheers and laughter. All the guards were mingling with the Wushang villagers. On the table, there were all kinds of chicken, duck, fish, deer, roe deer, seafood, and all kinds of delicacies. Ah! Give me another bowl of rice. I've never eaten such delicious food. This is a duck. It's so soft. Our Wushang village should raise a whole flock of them. So this is a fish. It's so soft and smooth. It's really delicious. The Wushang villagers were all immersed in this feast. The Wushang villagers' diet was extremely simple and plain. These chicken, duck, fish, deer, roe deer, and seafood were naturally not from the Wushang villagers. This time, Wang Chong came to Wushang village prepared. For this trip to Wushang village, he did not only bring medicinal pills and Wujian grass to help the little girl. This time, when entering the mountains, everyone brought a few big boxes. The boxes were not filled with heavenly treasures, pearls, or gems, but the simplest ingredients, which were the chicken, duck, beef, pork, lamb, and roe deer. Not only that, Wang Chong even brought along a specially selected cook from the army cook's army. The poor Wushang villagers had always been trapped in the mountains. They usually ate kudzu vines and sealwort, so they had never eaten such delicious food before. This delicacy left the women and children of Wushang village drooling, their mouths dripping with oil. Even the adults, drinking the fine wine Wang Chong had brought from the outside world, felt so moved that they wanted to cry. Think about it, a group of people who had been eating plain food for decades, thinking that the best food in the world was sealwort or kudzu vines. Suddenly, they tasted delicious food that looked, smelled, and looked good. One could imagine how moved they were. Overnight, all the Wushang villagers' impression of Wang Chong and his group changed greatly. If the expedition was said to be based on the chief's opinion at the beginning, then now, everyone had a good impression of Wang Chong and his group from the bottom of their hearts. Come, cheers. We won't go home until we're drunk. Good brother, another bowl. Ha, 1 bowl is nothing. At least 3 bowls. If you follow our marquis, you will eat and drink well and conquer the world. That will be great. That's right. It's a waste to waste such good martial arts in this valley. You should follow us to conquer the world. That's what a man should do. Ha, this is called, no discord, no concord. Actually, we want to. But the rules of the tribe are there, and no one can violate them. But now that the chief has agreed, everything is different. If you need me in the future, I will sign up. Ha, a real man, another cup. Chapter 713. Marquis is formidable. With this, our recruitment won't be a problem at all. On the plaza, the 2-meter-tall giant Li Sai was sitting next to Wang Chong. As he gazed at the roaring bonfires and the cheerful chatter, he suddenly whispered. At this moment, he was truly convinced of Wang Chong's abilities. He had personally experienced just how formidable the Wushang people were. Even if he personally took the field and took out his Wuzi steel sword, he still wouldn't be able to defeat the Wushang people. In truth, no matter how powerful one was, it would still be very difficult to subdue the Wushang people. The strength of these people could no longer be described as a village, a clan, or a tribe. But Li Sai had not expected that the problem that he had spent so much time and effort to accomplish would be easily solved by Wang Chong's arrival. He thought about how the Wushang village chief had personally refused Wang Chong. But now, not only had he agreed to Wang Chong's request for the recruitment, the two sides had even become friends, enjoying the bonfires, eating large pieces of meat and drinking large bowls of wine. It was truly inconceivable. The more he interacted with Wang Chong, the more Li Sai sensed that Wang Chong was inconceivable. There seemed to be no problem in this world that he could not resolve. This was true in the War of the Southwest, and this was also true in Wushang village. His abilities seemed to have no limits. Li Sai truly couldn't think of any problem in this world that could truly stump him. Of course, what convinced Li Sai the most was that Wang Chong had actually had people bring these ingredients for this operation. Marquis's decision to have people bring these ingredients was truly a wise one. I feel that these chickens, ducks, fish, beef, and mutton are even more useful than last night's operation. Li Sai sincerely said. The breadth of Wang Chong's thoughts was always unimaginable to others. For example, the Uzun Plateau spreading plague, or the destruction of the Mengshi granary at the final moments of the War of the Southwest, or Wang Chong's conquest of the Wushang villagers while having his entourage bring so many chickens, ducks, fish, beef, and mutton. These seemingly useless or insignificant actions didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary at the time, but only after everything was over would one deeply understand just how deep and broad Wang Chong's thoughts were. Behind these seemingly ordinary actions, making them even more willing to prostrate themselves before him and follow him. Wang Chong just smiled indifferently and didn't say anything. Once I'm done here, I'll go to Steel City. I'll leave the matter of Wushang village to you. In addition, I have arranged for a large amount of food to be sent to Wushang village. 50 to 60,000 Wushang people, relying on our food alone is far from enough. This general understands. I will definitely complete this task beautifully. Li Sai deferentially said. Ha, then it's fine. Wang Chong smiled, patted Li Sai on the shoulder, and drained the bowl of Bamboo Grove Hut. Then, under Li Sai's flabbergasted gaze, he put down the bowl and walked to the edge of the plaza, to a place where the light from the bonfires could not reach. Over there, a rock-like figure stood there, towering like a mountain range, silently guarding the darkness. Warrior, how should I address you? Wang Chong smiled. In the darkness, the stalwart figure glanced in surprise at Wang Chong, but he quickly looked away. After a long while, a muffled voice could be heard. Cui Piaoqi. Cui Piaoqi, a good name. Do you drink? My apologies, I can't drink because of my duty. Ha, good. I truly can't drink because of my duty. But even if I can't drink now, it doesn't mean I can't drink at other times. This is a jar of wine I brought from outside. Take it. In the darkness, the sturdy figure finally raised his head, looking at the young man in front of him with some surprise. He seemed to be a little confused. There were so many people in Wushang village, why did he find him, and why did he give him a jar of wine? Ha, take this jar of wine, I won't disturb you anymore. Seeing that the man seemed to still have some resistance in his heart, Wang Chong finally said. All right. The man answered in a muffled voice, and finally took the jar of wine from Wang Chong's hand. At the moment he lowered his head, with the help of the light from the bonfires in the plaza, a few words were clearly written on the grayish-brown jar of wine Overlord's Blaze. The man raised his head, and his eyes finally showed a hint of surprise. However, Wang Chong had already turned around with a carefree expression, and walked away into the distance. At that moment, no one knew that a complicated look flashed across Wang Chong's eyes. Some people can start over, but some things can never go back. You and I used to be indifferent to life and death, and we fought side by side on this broken land, fighting from the north to the south, and defending the common people. We were as close as brothers. But now, you and I don't know each other. I recognize you, but you don't remember me anymore. That jar of wine used to be our favorite strong drink back in the day. Take it as a tribute to our friendship back then. Time has passed, and although everything can't go back, in the end, our dreams are still the same, and that's enough. With this thought, Wang Chong quickly left Wushang village. Starting from Wushang village, going west for about 70 or 80 miles was Wang Chong's territory. At this very moment, there was a completely different scene that was bustling with activity. Crane, crane. Be careful, pay attention to the structure of all the parts. Everything has to be the same size, don't make a mistake. Raise it a little higher, raise it a little higher. Make sure that the second layer of the steel walls are aligned, or else they'll leave gaps. The eastern wall has been set up, and all the joints have been fitted. All craftsmen, pay attention. Begin pouring molten iron to reinforce the walls. Pay attention to the stair towers. The steel walls are very heavy, so reinforce them all. Teams 2, 3, 4, and 5, prepare to rest. Teams 17, 18, 19, and 20, prepare to ascend the towers. Hurry up and take turns resting. At this moment, more than 50,000 muscular craftsmen had gathered in the City of Steel. They had come from various parts of the Tang dynasty, the great clans, and the common folk. All of them were working together, working on the walls like a swarm of ants. Wang Chong's fief was particularly large, and because it was located on the Silk Road to the northwest, it was rather desolate. Thus, after receiving instructions from the Bureau of Revenue, they made an exception and increased Wang Chong's fief by several times. In any case, it was a barren wasteland. If Wang Chong could really succeed, it would be of great benefit to the imperial court and the empire. This was because it could make the entire empire more prosperous. Moreover, Wang Chong was earning money from the Hu. And Wang Chong did not stand on ceremony. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he expanded the city to its greatest extent. This city was more than 10 times the size of the Lion City on the shore of the Arai. And the construction of this city required a massive amount of manpower. The 50,000-strong craftsmen were only the first wave. A second wave of 50,000 craftsmen was on the way to the City of Steel, and in the future, there would be a third wave, a fourth wave. Just to ensure that these people were fed and housed, there were more than 30,000 logistics workers. Adding on the caravans transporting wood, steel, and other construction materials, the guards, and other miscellaneous workers, the City of Steel now had more than 100,000 people. With such a large number of people, just organizing and arranging them was already a huge project. It wasn't something that ordinary people or powers could handle. But the City of Steel was currently in an orderly state. All the craftsmen, logistics, guards, and transport teams, nearly 100,000 people were working together like precise instruments, constantly working together to construct this miraculous City of Steel. Although the City of Steel was still in the midst of construction, it had unquestionably become a legend in the world of craftsmen, attracting the attention of all the craftsmen in the world. There were even many people who had volunteered to join the construction, hoping to leave their sweat and footprints on this legendary City of Steel. They wanted to brand their names on the city. As a craftsman, there was nothing more worthy of pride. Marquis, the initial materials have all arrived. The swordsmithing clans of the capital and the various prefectures of the Tang dynasty are all working to construct the steel modules we need. There are already more than 10,000 swordsmiths and sword shops helping us forge refined iron and steel modules. In addition, I've already dispatched people to the various swordsmiths, sword shops, and swordsmithing clans to control the quality of the refined iron. The City of Steel is no small matter, and I don't want anything to happen to it. On the walls of the bustling City of Steel, Zhang Shouji and Wang Chong stood side by side, confidently chatting. He held great expectations and enthusiasm for this City of Steel. During this period of time, Zhang Shouji had been working day and night in Wushang, and he did not feel the slightest fatigue. It's been hard on you, but the City of Steel still needs to be expedited. The terrain here is complex, and only by constructing the city as quickly as possible can we gain a foothold here. Wang Chong held his hands behind his back as he spoke to Zhang Shouji on the walls. Understood. Several groups of people have come to spy on us, day and night, without rest. I've already ordered the soldiers to step up their patrols and expand the perimeter to prevent them from approaching. Zhang Shouji sternly said. Cree. As the two were speaking, a shrill cry came from the sky, particularly ear-piercing in the bustling City of Steel. Wang Chong and Zhang Shouji raised their heads and saw that high up in the sky, beneath the clouds, a tiny black dot was unfurling its wings and circling above the City of Steel, circling again and again. And as he looked up, he saw that there were even more black dots circling above the City of Steel. Screech! One voice after another rang out incessantly, and everyone's cries were different. Chapter 7:14. It seems like quite a few people are paying attention to the construction of our city, huh? Wang Chong smirked as he looked at the sky. It's not just these scouting birds. Starting from the first day, countless Western regioners, Turks, Uzan, Arabs, Karak-Spazinu, and Gogurians have been appearing around our fief every day. They've disguised themselves as jewelers from the Western regions, horse traders, or even Arab sword merchants. They've been constantly monitoring our surroundings. We've already driven away quite a few groups, but there's still an endless stream of them. Zhang Shouji said. He glanced worriedly into the distance. Wang Chang's expression was calm as he followed Zhang Shouji's gaze. Sure enough, several li away, he could see tiny black figures standing on a low hill, looking in their direction. Marquis, should we form a team to drive away these people? Zhang Shouji said. There's no need. Wang Chong waved his hand, a carefree expression on his face. If someone is building a city, there will definitely be people paying attention. It's impossible to kill them all. As long as the Uzan, Turks, Arabs, and Karak-Spazinu want to, they'll send out an endless stream of scouts to gather information. Let's keep them. Wang Chang's demeanor was relaxed, and his expression exuded an aura of conviction. Whether it was the birds overhead or the scouts around them, they were nothing more than mosquito bites to Wang Chong. Since he dared to build a city here, he wasn't afraid of anyone coming to gather information. But Marquis, there's one more piece of news that this old man doesn't know if he should say. Zhang Shouji hesitated, a hint of apprehension and hesitation in his eyes. Oh. Wang Chang's eyes flashed. He turned his head and looked at Zhang Shouji subconsciously. After interacting with Zhang Shouji for so long and going through life and death situations together, the impression that Zhang Shouji gave him had always been that he was straightforward. He would never hesitate or worry so much. What's wrong? Is there anything you can't say in front of me? The Uzan, the Arabs, and the Turks can be ignored. After all, they're all within reason, but our position is far too unique. We're right at the intersection of their factions. But besides them, we've also discovered scouts from Baiding, Anxi, Qixi, and Longxi. Marquis, this isn't good for us. Zhang Shouji said, and the space between his brows was shrouded in deep worry. The Baiding Protectorate, the Anxi Protectorate, the Qixi Protectorate, and the Big Dipper army of Longxi, any member of the Tang dynasty would be keenly aware of the significance of these names. Wang Chong had made a name for himself in the War of the Southwest, so it was within reason that he had attracted the attention of these foreign kingdoms. But if Baiding, Anxi, Qixi, and Longxi had also sent scouts, then the situation was far from good. Wang Chang's brow creased as he fell silent. Baiding had An Sishun, Anxi had Gao Xianji, Qixi had Fomin Linta, and Longxi had Geshu Han. These were all influential great generals of the empire, figures of the Big Dipper and the Big Dipper, wielding enormous influence in the military and the imperial court. It was already extremely difficult for an ordinary person to obtain the attention of even one of them, but Wang Chong had received the attention of 4 great generals at the same time. The regional commanders' incident. With a flash of understanding in Wang Chang's mind, he understood. These 4 great generals were usually far apart from each other and rarely interacted with each other in private. In truth, the empire strictly forbade these powerful great generals from colluding with each other in private. But even so, the 4 of them had one thing in common: in the regional commanders' incident, Wang Chang's memorial had thoroughly offended them. All 4 of them had submitted memorials to the imperial court requesting that Wang Chong be executed and that he be imprisoned in the imperial prison. They're settling accounts after the fall. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. During the regional commanders' incident, he had been in the distant capital and had the protection of his clan. Not even Geshu Han, Fomin Linta, and the other great generals had been able to do much to him. But the situation was different now. He had come to Wushang and was establishing a fief and a city on the border of the 4 great generals. Given their tempers, it would be truly strange if they allowed him to build a city right under their noses. Although Wushang was close to the Silk Road, its geographical position was very unique. Several hundred li to its left was the edge of the Uzan Plateau, where the Uzan cavalry could descend. And to the northeast, 500-some li, was the border of the Western Turkic Khaganate, the territory of the Turkic Ishbara Khagan. Although it was 500-some li, this distance was nothing to cavalry. And if one followed the Silk Road to the northwest, one would reach the end of the road, where the Anxi Protectorate, commanded by Anxi Protector General Gao Xianji, was located. This road was far too important, so any attempt to build a city on the Silk Road would attract the attention of all sides. The imperial court had originally established the Qixi Protectorate here to fend off the Western Turkic Khaganate to the east and the Uzan Empire to the west. With the assistance of the Anxi Protector, the Baiding Protectorate, and the Longxi Big Dipper army, it was completely capable of protecting the merchants traveling the Silk Road. But it just so happened that all these protector generals had been offended by Wang Chong. Now that Wang Chong was building a city in Wushang, it was hard to say if these protector generals would play any tricks. If the Uzan or Western Turks really did charge over, it was hard to say if these protector generals or great generals would help. It was even possible that these protector generals and great generals would intentionally let the Uzan and Turks pass. After all, no one could blame them for having such a long defensive line. These were all problems that Wang Chong had to consider. Relax, it won't be a big problem. To his surprise, Wang Chong grinned and quickly regained his composure. Since I dared to build a city in Wushang, I've made thorough preparations. In addition, the city of steel has only just been established and I've only just been made a marquis, so everyone is paying attention to this matter. Even if Geshu Han, Gao Xianji, Fomin Linta, and Nsis Hun have any ideas, they wouldn't dare to make any careless mistakes at a time like this. Otherwise, it would be too obvious. They're all great generals of the empire, powerhouses of the major powers. They wouldn't do something so childish. In this period of time, no matter how uncomfortable they are with us, no matter how dissatisfied they are with us, they have no choice but to help us guard the border. High status had its benefits, but it also had its restrictions. Gao Xianji, Geshu Han, Fomin Linta, and Nsis Hun were all great generals of the empire, but this also meant that their every action was being watched by everyone in the court. Thus, there were many things that could not be done, or at least, they could not be too obvious. This, truly is the case. Zhang Shouji nodded. After all, he was a master architect of the imperial palace and had interacted with many high officials and nobles, so he had a rough understanding of the politics of the court. He knew that what Wang Chong said was the truth. No matter how much the great generals and protector generals disliked and loathed Wang Chong, they had no choice but to endure for the time being. Not only did they have to endure, they also had to think of a way to protect him. Otherwise, if something happened, even the Holy Emperor would place the blame on them. After all, there were so many people who were watching over Wang Chong's fief. But even so, this is only the beginning. After we build a city in Wushang, it's still their territory. After this period of time, what should we do? Zhang Shouji said. The Silk Road was very long, very long. Wang Chong's decision to build a city here seemed very casual, but this was actually not the case. This was because the merchants of the Silk Road would only find a place to rest when they had a very long journey ahead of them, and when the road was barren and they couldn't find a place to rest. Thus, if Wang Chong's city wanted to gain the favor of these merchants, it could not be too close to a city or village. And there were not many places that satisfied this condition. And Wushang was the best of them all. First of all, it was very far from the capital, and the merchants would be very tired from the journey. Qixi was not far from Wushang, and not far from it was a vast desert. Qi was a desert, and this was where the name Qixi came from. The influence of the desert meant that the weather here was extremely dry, and it was easy for people to get tired. The most obvious of these was the need to replenish their water. This was the most essential requirement. If there was a city where one could rest and replenish their food and water, this was the dream of all merchants. On the other hand, even the merchants from the Abbasid Caliphate, Karak Spazinu, and the western regions would want to rest and replenish their energy. This was because it was a very long journey from here all the way to the capital of the Tang dynasty, and there was no place to replenish one's water. And the existence of Uzan and the Western Turkic Khaganate made Wang Chong's city of steel even more precious, as it provided a place of refuge for travelers. Thus, Wang Chong didn't have many choices about where he could establish his fief. Zhang Shouji knew of Wang Chong's ambitions, and he also knew that he wasn't building a city here just to make some money. Lion City in the southwest had already proved this. Anyone who believed that Wang Chong was only doing this to make money was truly a fool. Mengshi Zhao had clearly been one such fool. But everything had a price. Since Wang Chong had decided to build a city here, he had no choice but to consider the dangers involved. Relax. We'll deal with soldiers with arms and flood with earth. I've already taken care of everything. As long as we can endure the first stage, I'll give them a great surprise. Wang Chong patted Zhang Shouji on the shoulder, unconcerned. In Wushang village, Li Sai had already begun to recruit soldiers. Wang Chong had already taught him all the training methods for the Wushang cavalry. He would remain in Wushang village for a very long time. Only when he had completed the most basic training would he leave Wushang village and come to the City of Steel. In truth, Wang Chong was already beginning to look forward to the first cry of the Wushang cavalry in this world. Zhang Shouji was perplexed. Wang Chong's plans were always far in advance. Even though he had followed Wang Chong for so long, he still couldn't understand what Wang Chong was relying on. But despite his doubts, there was one thing that Zhang Shouji could be sure of. Wang Chong had already taken care of everything. This was the most important thing. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.